Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. We're finally starting. Welcome to this very interesting event. Thank you all for coming. My name is Helen Hayes, some of you know that, and I'll be later on introducing the various people who are contributing, participating in this exciting event. First of all, I'd like to say a bit in terms of welcoming you and also locating perhaps where this event lies in terms of our research interests and activities here in the Ed School. As we all appreciate, this is a very interesting time in China. There are many changes taking place, and there are many challenges that arise with those changes. And one of the things that I particularly, as a non-Chinese person, very much somebody in a different culture, recognise as a researcher is the importance of understanding China, but not through the lens of Western eyes. It's important that we look at China from a perspective which starts from assuming we know very little, or our assumptions are not going to be useful. And I think that's something I've learned in the last 2 years of working in relation to the Chinese data, and talking about it today. Now, China is explicitly, as you know, trying to establish an agenda for social values, for educational goals, and particularly goals and values with a distinctive Chinese characteristics. There's a lot of writing, a lot of talking about what this agenda will be in a number of Chinese government and non-governmental documents. And there are, as you appreciate, at least from the news and not anything else, a number of tensions that arise around the extent to which the Chinese government does or does not want to encourage or discourage Western influences in China, particularly in the context of education, and the extent indeed to which the government wants to have control of the media. We see every day in the newspapers examples of these tensions playing out. So again, it's a very interesting time in China. Now, much is going on in Harvard regarding China-related research and China-related policy discussions. Almost every time one opens the newspapers, a report on somebody's conference on China. A lot is going on. We're going to look at some of the issues that are raised by the changes in China today in terms of the implication or impact on education. Now, I think I'd like to say something about education, which I'm sure is very familiar to all of you, and that is that education is not confined to classroom teaching. Sometimes people who are not educated think that it's all about the classroom, which they vaguely remember from years back, not necessarily always favourably. But it isn't only about the classroom, because education is very much broader than that. It's really about how cultural ideas and skills also are transmitted, sustained, reproduced, and so forth through a wide variety of media resources, including institutions, including media, and including the social practices. And school is only one of the routes by which this process of reproduction and production of culture takes place. And today we'll be looking in our papers that we will cover in today's session rather. We'll be covering some of the issues that are raised by the changes in China, developments in China, in the context of education goals and educational practices. But as I said, they will certainly not be restricted to the classroom in any way. And of course we find these questions of interest not only for people who either live or work in China as from the Chinese culture, but also people like myself, for example, and others who are either wishing to or already are working in partnership with institutions and people in China. So we're hoping that we're going to talk about issues which will be laying the foundations for the kind of interaction and dialogue that we are seeing already taking place between and within China and the States, and particularly also within particularly our institution, Harvard. So, let me say about this afternoon's organisation. We've got 3 parts this afternoon. In the first session, we'll be talking, those of us who have been involved in a project in China, gathering data on young people's values. And the first session, you all I think have copies of the programme. The first session, we're covering 4 papers that report some of the data from that project. The second session, we have 4 speakers who have in different ways have expertise or interest or research results, reports from their work in the Chinese context, giving us a broad picture of different education-related issues around China-related matters. The third session is a panel discussion. We'll start off by having all the people who've been speaking this afternoon on the panel, and we'll start off talking initially amongst ourselves about the issues that are raised. So there's like a kind of TV chat show, basically. But then we'll open it up very soon to audience participation. We hope you will participate very fully and enthusiastically in the discussion later in the afternoon. After which we will move next door and enjoy ourselves with various forms of sustenance. So thank you again for coming. So I will now start by being the first speaker, inviting you to the first speaker. The talk I'm going to present is the first of the 4 talks based on our China project. Just to briefly summarise this, in 2011, Robert Selman and myself got funding from the Heart of China Fund to do a research project in Shanghai and Nantong. And we are totally indebted to our research officer, who's unfortunately unable to be with us today, Zhu Zhao. She's now a postdoc at Calgary, but she was a graduate member of this institution. And she basically organised and conducted the research. Neither Bob Selman nor I, unfortunately, speak Mandarin, but we were working in partnership with East China Northern University, who were very helpful in providing us with all the resources we need to access the schools. So what we're talking about in the first session reflects various various aspects of data from that project. And I'm going to start by talking about the quantitative data, the data based on our questionnaires. Oops. There are a number of emergent issues, emergent questions, that, in a sense, I'm extending what I was saying earlier about what's happening in China. There is increased civic awareness and increased participation amongst young people. There is perceived to be a moral crisis discourse in China about selfishness, indifference to others, and profit-driven low standards, which of course is seen as a consequence perhaps of the new values emerging in the new agenda for China. There is an official agenda for citizenship education, which is emphasising market values, humanistic values, and interpersonal skills. There is also, and we'll be coming back to this later on this afternoon, intense academic competition in schools. And all these variables, if you like, provide a kind of background, backdrop for the research that we were undertaking. So the question we were asking in the project overall, how do young Chinese people make sense of morals and issues? What do they see as moral and social problems in China? Where, to whom, and to what do their moral and civic conflicts lie? How effective do they feel? How these questions also reflect their beliefs and understandings of individual society relationships and the nature of social order. Briefly, the design of the project is a relatively small project, but the data was extremely rich. We had a total of over 500 participants. We used questionnaires, focus groups, and interviews. There were 2 age groups, grade 8 and grade 11. There were 2 cities, cosmopolitan, large, international Shanghai, and a somewhat smaller Nantong. It's called a medium-sized city. It has, I think, something like 10 million rather than 25 million people. We had looked also at urban versus rural differences, and we also sampled high and average achieving schools. The questionnaire covered a number of questions. I was going to talk about today a bit. What constitutes good citizenship? What is a good citizen? What social issues concern them? In what civic activities have they participated? And what are the age, gender, and rural-urban and also school effects on these belief systems? Now, this is first of all what they've done. Because young people in China appear to be, at least on their reports, pretty civically active, if we define, as we do, civics pretty broadly, because we believe that civics is just not confined, for example, as it is sometimes in the American discourse, to voting. It really does include a whole range of community-oriented activities. And you see, I won't go through the list, that in fact 97% of people in our sample had done something in the last 2 years. And this is the kind of distribution. A lot of them have done things like recycling, put themselves for election, and picking up litter. This incidentally compares pretty favorably with a parallel sample that I did in Britain about a few years ago, where somewhat fewer people had been involved in civic actions in the last 2 years, or at least 7 they had. So let's look at the concept of good citizen. How important is each of the following in being a good citizen? I will tell you that the questionnaire draws upon a well-established set of questionnaires that have been used initially in a very big 28-nation study in 1999, and which has been modified by other people for other purposes later on, including my own British data. But this is a modification of that questionnaire for the Chinese context. So let's just look at the kind of things that were important. This is in rank order. The most important, just to say the columns on the right-hand side, ignore the right-hand, 3 right-hand column, that is the standard deviation. The column next to it is the means on a 4-point scale. Obeying the law is clearly the most important attribute of being a good citizen. Taking part in activities to protect the environment, knowing the country's history, following political issues in the media, supporting government policies. They're all pretty important. They're all about 3, right down to talking to your family and friends. So they have a quite strong sense of what constitutes being a good citizen. Now, this is a questionnaire, so they were responding to the cue which said, tell us how important these are. We weren't asking them to tell us this, as it were, from scratch. In other words, this is what they were saying, did they agree with this, rather than coming spontaneously with it. Now, in terms of what was important, obeying the law was obviously extremely important, blue being very important. So that turned out, as in other countries, that obeying the law is the most important thing a citizen can do. So what in government policies is pretty important in that sample, in that, if you combine blue and the blue and orange, it's really 83% of the things, and they're very important, or they're called fairly important. Participating in a peaceful protest against an unjust law. Again, a very high proportion thought that was important, which was slightly surprising to some of us who have stereotypes about China being a country where protest is not encouraged. Join the Communist Party. Again, important, but not quite as important as some of things. If we look now at how we did what's called a factor analysis, which some people know about, we basically look at correlations between beliefs and see what kind of clusters you have. And we found there were 3 emergent clusters. And I have to thank Chen Chen, who's here, who's one of the authors of this paper, for doing this data analysis. The 3 groups of beliefs that we found emerging from the questionnaire about a good citizen are seeking information, conventional participation, and taking action. And I'll elaborate what these mean. Seeking information comprise these 3 items. Talking with your family and friends about social political issues in the news, following political issues in the media, and knowing about the country's history, which we think is really about seeking information. We made some comparisons based on age and in this case and gender, which was significant. The younger kids, the grade 8 kids, were actually scored higher on this particular cluster than the older kids. And girls scored higher than boys. So in terms of defining this as a good citizen, this is more something that the younger kids, the grade 8 kids over the grade 12 did, than they did, and girls more than boys. The second factor, cluster, conventional participation, supporting government policies, joining the party, and obeying the law. And we find again that grade 8 has a higher support belief this is an important attribute of being a citizen than grade 11. Girls again, more than boys, rural versus urban, and Nantong students versus the Shanghai students. So we're seeing younger, more rural, and perhaps less sophisticated young people, and also conventional participation more than the older urban ones. Taking action, this is defined as taking part in activities promoting human rights, participating in peaceful protest against a law you believe unjust, and taking part in activities to protect the environment. And we see that, again, grade 8 is more involved in taking action than grade believing in taking action, being sought to citizenship. And again, Nang is somewhat more, less cosmopolitan students endorse this more. So what social problems or issues concern? We felt it was very important to know what it was that they cared about, what they would like the government to change, where they saw that the issues and problems of Chinese society lie. Now, the colour coding indicates that these were above the mean for the whole group. So let's look at the top ones. You see, food safety came out really strongly. The policy of the college and high school entrance exam, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is an extremely competitive examination, which causes a considerable amount of stress, and Bob will be talking about in the second session. Rising pollution, again, anyone who's been to China will appreciate that. Better facilities for young people and healthcare. These were all highly rated as issues that they would like the government do something about. Again, it asked about age differences in concerns about social problems, and we found, again, the younger kids expressed more concern about pollution, nuclear energy, controlling crime, and better facilities. The older kids, unsurprisingly, this is what concerned them most directly, was the policy of the school, college and high school examination, which causes a considerable amount of stress. So what they're seeing an effect in this data that the younger kids, the 8th grade kids, seem to be more actively engaged in thinking about civic issues and indeed in endorsing taking action. They're somewhat less sophisticated in some of their thinking, but they certainly are more actively involved. The older kids appear to be either perhaps they're just caught up with examinations, or possibly they are in a kind of different place culturally because of where they are in their development and in their education. So that's the first set of data, the quantitative data, and we'll be building in the next 3 talks on other aspects of the data. I think if you take one question, a Curia, an Japanese question now, there'll be time at the end of the session for some discussion. At the end of this session briefly, and then of course later in the afternoon, then we'll look for questions of fact or detail. Okay, in that case, I'd like to introduce our second speaker, who is Bob Selman. Bob is the Roy E. Larson Professor of Human Development and Education at the Professor of Psychology and Psychiatry at Harvard University, and his research on youth social development across cultural contexts includes studies of social awareness in historical, civic, and ethnic contexts, prevention of harmful psychological, educational, and health outcomes, and the promotion of academic achievement, ethical reflection, and healthy participation in social media. And Bob is basically the PI, co-PI on the project. So Bob, the floor is yours. You need help to
I'm getting help. Nice to see so many people here. I really want to make a special acknowledgement on this amazing leadership of this private institution. I also want to thank Helen for giving such a succinct presentation and yielding her time to me for my talk. Luckily, she's busy.
Yes.
Are we good?
I think so, yes.
Oh, you didn't hear me. I thank you for yielding. You were so succinct. I thank you for yielding some of your time.
Very nice.
Okay. It's great. It's been very exciting. Maybe a long time. I'm a roamer, so it's hard. Can you hear me? Everybody in the back? So this is the title of our presentation. We've already been introduced to Xu Zhao, the 3 middle authors are all previously enrolled students, either or current students at Harvard. This is our conference. So, Helen alluded to this, but I want to go a little deeper. These presentations, Helen's, mine, Ju, that I believe you'll give, and go deeper and deeper into the inferences about the data. So the first pass, everything is pretty much on the surface, low inference kind of analysis, and each subsequent one is going to go a little deeper. All right, so these are some scenarios that we that represent a kind of methodology we've used for a long time. We try to use dilemmas, scenarios, situations, instances of some kind of social dilemma, social situation that yearns for resolution, yearns for a way to return to a sense of balance. And we use these somewhat successfully in the United States in a wide range of studies, from the most descriptive to those interventions where we're trying to impact kids' social development and wanting to see if there's actually some kind of change. Each of these approaches that we use has a slightly different kind of methodology and a slightly different kind of analysis. In the particular study that we're going to talk about today, we tried to translate to the best that we could some of the situations that we use in the United States to situations that we thought would be relevant in the People's Republic of China and in Shanghai and in Taiwan in particular. And so we really use three. One is this situation we call the ratty shoes situation. This one is called, this is about a student who has an accent, and this is about a young person who brags about this person's own competencies in math. I am told that these are gender neutral names. Okay. But I can't verify that. Okay, but I can tell you that all of the names that we use in the United States are gender neutral. They can be ethnic, but they're gender neutral. So Jiraiya has a certain kind of ethnicity, but is gender neutral in the United States. Jiraiya is also a student who comes to school, who's new to school, and has a weird hairstyle, according to the culture he's entering into, and likes different music. So another thing that's in common across these situations is you have a newcomer coming into the situation. They're always newcomers, okay? And they bring with them difference. They bring difference with them. Now, some of these differences that they bring, they can't do anything about it. Okay? These are unavoidable differences. So you could argue this academically, but basically the youth with the ratty shoes who comes in to the new school and is presumed to be low income, but not necessarily low quality, is poor and is not going to be able to do much about that, at least not in the short time that he's in the class. Okay? But the student, Wang Ping, who comes from, say, a rural part of the country, Shanghai in that time, comes with a very thick accent. Perhaps it's not understood, perhaps she's not understood, and it's a little bit both ways. You can change your accent, but it's not that easy. My Brooklyn accent is almost undetectable now, but it's only taken 45 years to get lost. But those of you with a very fine ear would know. So what's really been amazingly fun about this project is that each of the analyses has been done by one of our students under Zhu and my supervision. Okay? So Eva Lee, who's now a doctoral student at the University of Connecticut, came last year or the year before, and she tackled the ratty shoe problem. Okay? And I'm going to say a couple of things about the method. Each of these students is given the freedom to a certain degree to do their own kind of analysis. The data are given to them. The questions have been given to them, but they don't have to use all the questions. They can use some questions, leave others out, and they can choose to bring different lenses to the questions. Okay? So I would say that Eva did a thematic content analysis, and just simply looking at the two questions that she focused on. What do you, as an advisor to the witness, to the disturbance, you are the, I want to make sure you got this, you are, as you read or are being read through these situations, what do you advise a witness in the school, in the classroom, who perceives a problem, and what do you recommend that person do, and why? So you can see these are the recommendations that the students gave, okay, in the sample that Helen already described for you. And these are the recommendations for why they gave those situations. And from an American point of view, from the perspective of people in the United States, the fact that so many of the students, and these are quantitative, these are not percentages, these are just raw data, so many justified whatever they decided to do by protecting Lee Wen's self-esteem. Lee Wen is the new kid in the block, all right? He's the new kid in the block, he's the one with the red shoes, and what we see is that students seem to go through all sorts of twists and turns in order to protect Lee Wen's self-esteem. So, small sample, very preliminary. Some of my colleagues call it crappy data. I won't point out who they are. But they've done a good analysis of these data. Okay, so I'm going to just go through this. These are further analyses of our data that I don't think we need to kind of dwell on right now. Okay? So, one of the things you're probably thinking, and as we do, all right, they said that, but do they do it? And do they mean it? And if they mean it, why do they mean it? What does it really mean to say, well, it's really important to protect this poor kid's self-esteem, so I'm not going to do anything? I mean, it would be very embarrassing to him if I tried to help him. So, I'll let us, we can talk about that at the end, okay? All right, so we also have done focus groups. I'm going to just go right through them, and I want to come now to the second analysis of the second situation, which is the newcomer with an accent. And this analysis was done largely by Xin Jiang, who is a doctoral student here, first-year doctoral student, who will be talking later about some of her own original work that she did as an undergraduate. Okay. So Wang Ping is the student who comes from some other part of the country and it's hard to understand. And the question that the participant in the studies asked is, what would you recommend to the kids who notice that this is a difficult problem? Okay. So this is a slightly different analysis than the first one. It's not simply what was the recommendation and making a thematic content analysis and what was the justification. This Xin asked the question, how does the interviewee, that is the students in our study, or the participants, frame the problem in the scenario, okay? The overall problem, okay? This, you might consider this moving slightly toward something that Helen and I call a discursive or a discourse analysis. It's not quite there yet, but it's moving in that direction, okay? And what Xin claims is that you can read these data and you can allocate the responses to one of two types. It's either the people are bullying this newcomer or the newcomer has an accent, and each of those represents what she would call the problem. She also points out there's actually 3 gradations between whether you point your finger without necessarily pointing blame at the kids in the class or at the newcomer. And those are variations that will be, well, it's mostly, am I getting this right? It's mostly the kids in the class who are the problem. It's a very balanced, and it's mostly the kid with the accent. One of the reasons that this is not quite a discourse analysis is that I insist that we get reliability. I insist that when we have these codes, multiple coders have to agree on the code. And we've spent the last 5 months trying to do that, which I will now schedule. Okay? And here is the final case, the case of the bragging math race. We do not have any of these such newcomers in our classes in the United States. There is no one in the United States who would come into a class from outside the culture and start bragging about his or her own math skills. Okay? That's a bold assertion. I leave it to somebody else to do the research to prove me wrong. So, what Chen Yi, who is over on the far corner there, embarrassed that I'm pointing her out, did was ask, what recommendation would you give to your friend and why? So she went back and moved to the more cautious, I would say, thematic content analysis. But her findings are really very interesting, even though, as we all acknowledge, they're quite preliminary. First of all, it's very important we have very high integrated reliability on the coding. And here are two examples that she provides. One example is someone who, when asked what you would think about the bragger, says, the bragger has good grades, indicating that he is better than us. We should study hard instead of teasing him. The bragger excels in math. Because of his grades, good grades, he is qualified. 2 minutes? Okay. And the other kind of response would be, that we see is, we are classmates, we are one family, we should get along harmoniously, we are a family, and everybody has responsibility to keep harmony in the class. So, I think what I'm going to do, in closing, is to read to you a critique of this kind of research. All right? Because most of you are in the academy in one way or another, and in fact, it is your role or position to be skeptical and to ask tough questions. I find these questions very frustrating because they're also cardboard cutout questions. They seem like if you don't answer these in the exact right way, you're a bad person kind of questions. We don't get to have any opinion kind of questions and black and white specific answer questions. If I didn't have to, I wouldn't even answer these questions because the questions are designed to pressure students to answer a certain way in which they wouldn't necessarily act in a real life situation. Please send some questions that are open-ended, that give students a chance to express differing opinions and feelings. Here's an example. What do you think of the community as so far as their monotonous activities and lifestyles? Okay? Please avoid more questions like, what would you do in a situation that on paper, 99.9% of children in America with half a brain would answer the exact same way questions. If you think I'm overreacting, I am just frustrated because I believe that you are underestimating this age group and you can get more out of your study by presenting more challenging questions. There are probably some of the brightest kids that I've ever known in this class, and I know that the deeper and more coherent questions will give them a way to improve on how they perform. Okay. Nevertheless, as a student taking this measure, I will now answer these questions. As I should say, a 6th grade student shall answer these questions. This is American case. So what did your main Casey do? She should stand up for July and tell the bully to back off. But in real life situations, she wouldn't do it. Why would you even make that recommendation? Because it's right, even if she doesn't listen. What might go wrong with your recommendation? Depending on who the bully might be,
that bully could beat Casey up. But if Casey has the courage to take his advice, it will still be right.
So I think I'll close there and turn the podium over to our next presenter. This is Helen. And I'll leave for somebody else to go ahead.
Okay, you're getting a picture of the kind of things we're doing in this. It's a very preliminary project. It's very rich because the kind of data we got was, for some reason, it was a lot of material came up and it allowed a lot of range for analysis and exploration, and particularly identifying and seeing what seemed to us as one kind of fascinatingly different ways of thinking about things. The kind of responses we got in the data was strikingly different from what we had found with American students and British students in the case of my own data. So we're discovering about some of the core issues that we think we need to address. We're thinking about working on education issues in China. So even though it's preliminary and small scale, we feel it's very rich. I'm going to talk now about another set of analysis of quantitative data in the project. This was the material that came from interviews and focus groups. Mostly what I'm going to cite actually is focus group data. The focus groups were groups of 4 young people, 2 boys and 2 girls, and in total there were 16 groups. And we asked these questions again, which to some extent replicate what was also in the questionnaires. Different kids took the questionnaires from those 2 focus groups, obviously. So again, these core research questions that we're asking throughout the study. What are the secret social problems? What are their causes? What might be solutions? And what does this reflect about the relationship between the individual and the state? So these are ways to kind of understand not only what we might call those individual opinions, but really how they're understanding or making sense of their relationship with individuals vis-a-vis their community and the state. And in God's example just now, it's quite clear that the kids responding to the vignettes he was describing, talking very much about preserving the self-esteem, maintaining the social harmony of the classroom, which are not characteristics that you find really in the same way in American culture. They're very crucial to Chinese culture. The thing I'm going to talk about now was addressing these questions in the focus groups. And the emergent problems, which to some extent mirror the ones that you saw in the questionnaires, they talked about the education system, the flaws and pressures, again the pressures examinations, but also the flaws in the education system. Now remember, these are spontaneous responses. This is not taking a questionnaire. This is actually what they thought about without any cues. Food safety again came up, pollution came up, social inequality came up, particularly the gap between rural and urban. These are people who are very aware of social inequality. Corruption in a whole range of areas of life. And what they define as declining morality and also the rise of materialism. Low moral quality was the phrase that often came up in these discussions. And we were analysing in terms of how they were making sense of the situation and how they were trying to find solutions to the situation they described. And what we were analysing is the kind of level of complexity and the number of perspectives that were incorporated into their finding of solutions. Or even, come to that, defining the problem, not only finding solutions, but also how to define the problem. The first level, if you like, the least complex level, is focusing on the individual, focusing on the concrete. The causes and solutions were things like individual grief, or the actions of individuals. The second level of perspective taking was systemic. The realization that to achieve improvement in society, you had to change particular laws, you had to change social institutions, and you certainly had to change government policies. A somewhat more complex perspective, which we found with a few of the older kids, was the idea that there are social, cultural, and historical factors, and that there are contexts within which problems may be exacerbated or may be alleviated by policy. So taking a macro perspective, I'm going to give you some examples so you can see it in a minute. And then, let's just give examples of the individual concrete. And here, this is from the focus group with Shanghai, 8th grade Shanghai kids in a rural environment. The coordinator, that's the person who's running the focus group. Why is, I'm talking about food safety. One person says, is human greed? Another one says, some people only think about short-term profit and ignore long-term impact. Why do people do that? Because of materialistic view of life, focusing very much on individual causes, individual blame. We move another example. 8th grade kids in Nantong in a rural area. This is about from an environmental problem, it's particularly concerned with pollution. Don't throw garbage in the river. Pick up litter. Plant more trees. These are very much concrete individual actions. And the problems of unsafe food. Report from town administration. Don't buy the product, food, and tell others not to buy it. What to do about overloaded buses? If the bus is overloaded, tell people to wait for the next bus. Really very, very common. Very individual. The sustainable perspective is, which you found in this example, is 11th grade Shanghai urban high-achieving schools, a pretty elite environment. Notice how many more words are involved in this section too. So Chien says food safety is a big issue. What happens now is people look for solutions after the problems have become serious. It should be the way around. The problem should be identified before the food is produced. Now we're paying the cost. The system is not really working. Food safety is only a surface issue. The real problem is nobody's loyal to the country and serves the public now. They're all pursuing self-interest. Nobody's thinking to the public and the country. Even when there's a small number of people like that, things can get much better. So although he's talking about individuals, he's talking about in the aggregate, all the number of people who are thinking like this creates problems in the system. And then I like the last one. The laws in China have problems, they are difficult. It's a one-party system, what do you expect? I have to say, one of the great surprises for us was the number of young people who very happily criticised the party, at least in the context of the interview. We didn't think that would happen, and it does. Okay, now the more complex meta perspective. This is actually an interweaving of concrete, systemic, and meta perspectives. The more concrete, individuals have different work capacity. It's a quality of people. Then we have a more systemic thing. If something with the government wants to develop a place, issue policies to promote development, like what happened in Fudan. And then we have something to move to the meta perspective. Historical reasons and geographical location are also important factors. Geographical location, people living in the valley, no matter how hard they work, they cannot catch up with the city. Then generation after generation, the gap will be larger. You see the huge difference between the individual explanation and the more meta perspective and the systemic. They're seeing a much larger picture with very different ways in which we might find solutions. We then extracted, if you like, three discourses, three ways of constructing meaning, three ways of thinking about the issue. Now, these are not typologies of people. These are ways of constructing meaning. It's important to emphasize that. We're not saying these people are compliant, or something. We're saying the way they're talking about it reflects a way of meaning-making, which is, with a dominant theme, is being compliant. So that in the first case. The compliant discourse accepts and adheres to norms and rules, including normative ways or conventional ways of making one's voice heard. The cynical approach, or cynical discourse rather, it expresses a belief that nothing can be done because the system is corrupt. There's no point young people doing it. Basically, it's a cynical perspective that also leads to people either feeling or believing they are powerless. The third one is critical, which recognizes the limitations of what they can do, but at the same time believes it's important to try to change the system and indeed to criticize it. To give you some examples, here's some quotations which we've identified as being compliant. And this is 11th grade rural low-achieving school. This is about enforced relocation of people when the government wants to redevelop particular areas of the city. They told us to move in a very short time. Some people don't like the compensation and go to the neighbourhood committee to stir things up. The government should pay attention to this problem, but that's fine. But then look at how the compliance comes in. If our neighbours don't want to move, we should persuade them to follow the rules of demolition and relocation. And then Peng says, the head of the province can urge those in charge to issue compensation policies. that meet the needs of the people. We can also organise some activities to tell people the benefits of demolition and relocation. It's a government policy to rebuild the rural areas. We can all move into new homes. I think you see why we identify this as essentially compliance with the system. The belief in that the system actually knows best and will solve the problems effectively. Cynical sounds very different. 11th grade Shanghai urban high-achieving kids, pretty elite kids. They say things like, the government serves the people. We all know what that means. It's almost impossible to change things. Suppose you become the head of the food bureau and you want to solve the food safety problem, but your boss doesn't like the way you serve the people. They'll kick you out, and you can do nothing. And there are those who want to serve the people, but after some time they become the same as the others. The problem is too big and our influence is too small. There's nothing we can do. So, do nothing. Then the critical, we had very few critical responses, possibly because it being something developed a bit later. These were only 17 years old. Nanhong School, a high achieving school, 11th grade. First time, I think people in the neighbourhood should organise into a team and talk to people in the factories, ask them to stop discharging pollutants into the river. They should then talk to people in the environmental bureau. But we don't have enough money to. I don't think we should lack in money. Government officials should use their banquet money for cleaning up the environment. I understand government have lots and lots of money to have wonderful meals, which doesn't go for people who are there conserving. But the key is, if they're willing to do it, it's not their money, it's not whether they're willing, it's our money. Although we don't have the power to decide how to use the money, we should be fully aware of this. Note that, please. We should be fully aware of this. It's not that they are behaving badly, it's us who allow them to do so. And that's a crucial element in the critical perspective. So although there were fairly few of the people who expressed this view, it's very clear it's a difference. I think the three extracts demonstrate quite clearly the differences between the three perspectives. So, in terms of variation, and again, we have to be careful, it's a relatively small sample, but they're pretty strong cues of where it's going. The individual concrete and compliant discourses were prevalent amongst 8th graders and among rural adolescents in both 8th and 12th grade. Cynical and critical discourses within a systematic or meta perspective were more prevalent among 11th grade urban students in higher achieving schools. Now, we might be tempted to say this suggests some kind of developmental change. Young kids can't think so complexly, and that would be consistent with a number of developmental theories. However, we believe that actually it's part of it, but what it also is there's a different cultural environment in the rural areas, and particularly outside the cosmopolitan area of Shanghai. There are paradoxes of two things going on. One is they seem more able to question aspects of the system, but at the same time in a more concrete way. So the urban kids are more sophisticated because perhaps the culture needs there are more opportunity to have resources, access to resources that suggest more cynical or critical reasoning. Though in fact it happened was a big example here from the Nanhong school. But what we want to argue is that we need to look at the cultural context, the school and the whole environment before we make claims that something which is purely a developmental sequence of all these 8th graders will turn into physically 11th graders in time. It's only a very small part of the story. So those are to give you a flavour of the rich analysis of the data that we've got. Qualitative analysis is extremely time-consuming, involves large teams of people as we've had, and it's great fun. But it is, as Bob says, iterative reliability is an issue, but then it's worth doing if you get some really fantastically rich material. We can take a couple of questions or comments if you want to, point of view of the next speaker. Yes?
I just have a question about the percentage between critical, central, and
I haven't got them by fingertips. Critical was very rare. It's very difficult. It was pretty much the cynical was compliant and cynical. I think compliant was larger quantity. Remember we had focus groups. There were about 16 groups, and within that we're talking about a quite wide variety of perspectives to be expressed. Oh.
So Helen and I are having a debate
About what?
this.
And the debate is whether those 17-year-olds are really critical theorists or just skeptics. Okay?
And so I won't say any more than that at this point, except to ask us to think what would be the difference between somebody who was a skeptic and somebody who was critical. The only thing I will add to it is to ask you to think back to that peer reviewer of our research who was in the 6th grade, and ask yourself whether that student was cynical, skeptical, or actually a critical theorist about the theory itself.
I think to argue critical theory is going to be, we don't expect critical theorists in their teams, but I suspect there's a certain kind of skepticism. The distinction between cynical and critical is that cynics basically say the system's corrupt, I can do nothing, I'm powerless. The people who are thinking critically, we use critical partly for alliteration, is that they recognise that it's important to be critical of the system as well as being critical of the system. So it's a belief that there's an agency in criticism, they're not powerless as people cynical. But I mean, it's critical, skeptical, it's semantic.
The way we resolve this so far is we're now spelling skeptical with a C.
I now introduce our fourth speaker to talk about the teacher data, which I didn't mention, so I should introduce it. Civic is a third-year doctoral student, Wisconsin living in human development and education. Her research interests include civic and moral education and social entrepreneurship in countries with large migrant populations. Currently, she's particularly interested in how teachers motivate young people to participate in civic engagement in China. Civic.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming and your interest in our journey. So today, like Helen said, I am going to talk a little bit about my work and looking at how teachers in mainland China manage their civic and moral education from the lens of how they negotiate the tension that they experience as agents of the state and educating moral selves in the unique context of China, and how, as a result of that, do they perceive their roles and responsibilities in a particular form of civic participation and protest. So, before I dig a little deeper, I want to tell you a bit about myself personally. As somebody who grew up and went through college in China, I used to see protests in our public discourse. But despite my recent interest in civic education, protests specifically, I haven't really participated in one myself during the student-led campus protest in 1989 when I was only 4 years old, in my mom's arms, shouting the slogans, demanding for democracy and the impeachment of political figures. And according to my mom's description, my poor mother, she quickly covered my mouth and took me away from the marching crowd of students down the street. And this memory was really quickly erased from my memory, not discussed in school, my parents, or the community at large. So that's that. But the idea that teachers operate as the agents of the state is not a unique idea to Chinese teacher. Globally, teachers enact common curriculums and they abide by common principles in their teaching, and students are taking national standardized tests. In that sense, all teachers, not just the ones in China, they share the common function as agents of the state. So it's not a particular role that only Chinese teachers take on. But what's unique in a Chinese context is that Chinese teachers also serve as important moral agents in shaping the moral and civic development of their students. But it is true that for teachers in China, they are, even though they're not formally recognized as civil servants, they are under the direct supervision of party branches in schools like Dangwei. And there are core to all schools, and nearly all teachers, particularly in big cities like Shanghai and Beijing, they are Communist Party members, and they, because the affiliation with CCP is deemed honorary and given privilege in recruitment. So, in that context, citizenship education in Chinese schools continue to manifest itself with the emphasis on preparing students to live and function harmoniously under the regime, building on the firm basics of collectively shared Chinese identity of patriotism. Now, all of these different orientations toward citizenship education contribute to the tensions that teachers experience as they negotiate what is asked of them as agents of state and what they believe to be the right things to do. So an exploration of this kind of tension gives us an incredible insight to see how teachers view the boundaries of government and schools and what kind of cultural, social, political discourses or resources are they drawing from informing their views and shaping the civic and moral development of their students. So what is my data? Oh, sorry. The main question that drives my interest, and particularly in this presentation, is what themes are teachers drawing upon in their perceptions of student roles in protest in relation to the broader government system to China. And I look specifically at these 16 teachers from 8th and 11th grade in the schools in Shanghai and Hong Kong, as Alan described earlier. And I look in today's talk specifically at teachers' responses on a real-life vignette, a real-life demonstration by citizens in Shanghai, China. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. In 2007, concerned about an environmentally damaging chemical plant approved by the local government, Xiamen citizens used multiple digital platforms to organize protests in the streets, and under the pressure from the public, the city government actually suspended the project. However, during the period of these protests, some schools sent out bans or notifications to the teachers asking students to refrain from participating in these protests, and if you participated, there would be serious sanctions, and such as not nominating you for the Communist Party. As we said, it's considered like an honorary track in the country in China. So in this later part of the interview, the one-hour interview, teachers were presented with the vignette, and they are asked these following questions. If you had a friend who is a teacher in these schools with a notice, what would you tell this friend to do? Should this teacher discuss these events with their student, and what are your views? For example, of students' participation in protests. Through our codes, there emerged 4 themes. One is that young people are being too immature to make reasoned judgment about civic issues and to regulate emotion. The second one is that the teachers had to stress the tension between civic engagement and the need to focus on the very competitive examination system that determines higher education later on their life trajectory. And teachers often alert to danger that sanctions for dissent might impair future opportunities later on in their life. And they also, some of them, a small amount of them, affirm the rights of young people to express their beliefs and their right to acquire certain civic skills in participating. So drawing on these previous 4 themes, we also distilled 3 narratives that capture teachers' perceptions of student roles in protest and how they negotiate tensions of experience and wanting to prevail certain goals of education and how they feel constrained in that context. And as Helen said, they are not typologies of people, but how they are making meaning in those particular contexts. So the first theme is wasteful, such that teachers perceive individual actions to have little to no impact on government policy, and that students should not be wasting their time and instead should prioritize their studies. And I will give you example. So in this excerpt, the teacher says, students should understand protest is not something that they can handle, so they shouldn't get themselves involved in it. Teachers want to talk about these issues with their students, and if we do, it is to guide them in a positive way, telling students to focus on schoolwork. So here, this teacher perceives protest to be something beyond the capacity of students and what they can handle, and considers their participation in protests a waste of time. Now, in this next excerpt, this teacher says, first, I don't recommend students participate in protests directly. They need to see other ways, like to talk to relevant departments who may consider things more holistically. As a student, no matter how impulsive or passionate you are, you can't solve this issue. So this teacher sees very little utility in students' direct participation in protest and in solving the issue, and grounds her or his critique that students are simply not in a position of power, whereas these government departments are, that they can be assumed to have any significant impact on making changes. So the second narrative is query, such that the teacher expressed concerns about the possible consequences of a student and stressed the need to avoid potential danger. So here we have this quote: as long as the topic of interest is not sensitive, I would talk about it with students. But some students misunderstand or get confused. They may become disorderly, insubordinate, and those who lack discipline may begin to have those behaviors like anarchists have. They may have good intentions participating in such activities, but then they would gradually become involved in other events in a similar way in the future, regardless of their intentions, and I don't think it's appropriate. So we see a teacher who expressed genuine concern for students' participation as having consequences on themselves as individuals, being misled and not being able to think rationally for themselves, and students are perceived as innocent beings who, while having the capacity to make decisions, may be misguided by some other forces and not be able to evaluate their situation strategically. Now, what's implicit here is both the recognition that protests origin from a place of good intentions and the critique that students should be careful in thinking about the appropriateness of their actions when it comes to public protests, regardless of their good intentions. I'll give you another example. So the teacher says, I think we should be cautious when we talk about protests. If we were to discuss it with students and perhaps when the students enter the society later on in their life, they will take actions similar to this whenever they come across something unjust. Sometimes even if it's an inappropriate request, they will act like this, as in irrationally. So they will raise banners and demand things whenever something happens, reform violently. I think that's what I'm worried about. So this teacher talks explicitly about his or her concerns towards the potential negative impact of protests on the students at an individual level. And this sort of echoes the urban myth that exposure to protests would unearth social issues within Chinese society, which would then lead to social unrest. Now, deeply rooted here is also the awareness that students will only model after radical behaviors as radical behavior aspects of protest without thinking rationally. And this type of irresponsible behavior would then lead to violent reforms that pose danger to the society as a whole. Now, the third narrative is wishful. We're having a conversation about whether or not it's the right term for this, but I'm very happy about the overview. So the teachers perceive protests as can actually be effective in affecting social change, and that students will learn useful civic skills in participation. This is a small percentage of teachers. So the teacher says, I really appreciate those people in society who stand in the face of injustice or for the advancement of a society. As a citizen, students have the right to participate in protests. I think in classrooms we should talk about it, and students need to know what is morally right and wrong. Some of them may live like me in the future, living their lives cautiously, but others can actively. The world needs people who can rush out to change it. So it's a very popular excerpt. There are a few nuanced layers that make this teacher's perspective very distinct from the rest. Instead of seeing youth as immature and incapable like the previous teachers, this teacher recognized students' rights first as a citizen to participate in social change making and making sound judgments themselves, and saw protests as having a function of changing unjust situations and advancing the society. This teacher also takes on a very wishful perspective in the sense that he or she wants his or her students to be bold, to be able to rush out to change the world, as opposed to a more realistic version of himself or herself as an example of those living cautiously in fear of political prosecution. So lastly, there's this quote for wishful narrative. This teacher says, I think students' participation in protest means that they are paying attention to social issues. They live here and they are part of the community. I think they have the right to participate, and we should teach students to care about society. You cannot simply sit in the classroom, you should show that you care, and students must learn the realities of injustice and different approaches to solving them. So again, I see this theme of wishful as teachers perceive protests to be effective in facilitating social change, that students will gain useful civic skills in participating as citizens. So what does this all mean, right? So in this presentation, we sort of talked about the different themes that emerge in the three broad frameworks or narratives of teachers. So this analysis shows that despite the economic and political advancement in Chinese society, political safety and political correctness is unfortunately still a big factor that hinders teachers from encouraging students to participate in critical civic engagement. However, it also shows that some teachers are, even within a relatively rigid authoritarian political system, some teachers are beginning to see potential for students to build their civic capacity to affect social change through forms like civic protests. And these tensions, while not explicit, contribute to how they manage the goals of civic and moral education in their classrooms. So lastly, I wanted to point out that as educators, we are teaching to the identity of our students, and what we teach has a message. And given the tension that teachers experience both as agents of the state and moral selves, how can we empower teachers to negotiate their tension in educating the citizens of the future and thinking from the perspective of students who encounter these multiple narratives of teachers every day that constantly shape their civic identities. In that sense, what messages are we communicating to the students? Thank you for listening.
We'll take a few questions now about the talks we just had. Remember, this time is later on this afternoon, more extended discussion, more elaborated. So, are there some questions for any of the four papers at this point? Yes. I think we've got a microphone if you'd like to.
Yes, so my question for Sue is in the wasteful country, and the two teachers example and the second teacher example, I feel that the teacher is not communicating that any civic action is ineffective, but rather protest is ineffective. So I'm wondering how we handle the problem of, like, are we trying to grapple with the teacher's perception of the effectiveness of the protest being wasteful, or any sort of like civic action being wasteful?
I think I was referring to the protest because that's the data we have, and that's through the lens that I'm looking at this particular form of civic engagement, and that's how I'm looking at it. But we also, in the interview, we have questions regarding more broadly what they see as qualities that make a good citizen versus qualities that make good person. And that's an example.
Second hand up, yes. Does it work? It does work now, yes, it does work. Yes, it's working. It's working. Yes, it's working.
It only works for me.
Just talk loudly, yes.
My question is really regarding the relationship between the last presentation and Helen's presentation. Simone's presentation really talked about three types of attitude or three types of perception about the teachers, and which coincidentally corresponding to the three types of students. So I wonder whether these are the same type of teachers actually teach the students that Helen was presenting. Because, when you present these three three W's, kind of corresponding very well with the three different type of students we see. And so my question is, are the students and the teachers are totally irrelevant, or they are actually, the teacher versus students relationship?
I think I can answer that by saying we are being quite careful about not rushing to too many comparisons and parallels, because again, partly because we're doing an in-depth study with a fairly small sample, so we're being very careful not to try to make any generalizations. However, it will next step would be to look at the ways in which the kind of comments and the responses that the teachers gave, and how that does map onto or relate to the students in their schools. Because we do know which schools each students were involved. So we will be able to do that kind of analysis. But the easiest thing to do would be to tick boxes and show relationships. But we're avoiding doing that because we want to be quite sure that we're looking at the kind of things, not just the typology of what is said, but the kind of way it's being expressed. But yes, that would be the obvious next step, is to see to what extent we're hearing the students reflect either what the teachers implicitly or explicitly say, or whether, in fact, more subtly, that if a teacher is expressing a particularly, we should say, wary or sort of wasteful point of view, the students feel somehow suppressed and don't produce more. I mean, it would be interesting if we found cynical students or critical or skeptical students in a classroom where the teacher is wasteful or wary. If it's expressing wasteful or wary responses, but that's the next step in the analysis. We're quite keen to be careful about how we make this comparison.
There's a statement in one of your writings about having used focus groups in urban and rural schools in Shanghai and Nantong.
Yes.
I've spent time in some of the Chinese cities, but earlier you described Nantong as a metropolitan area of 10 million. Are you calling that rural?
No.
Okay.
No, we're certainly not. There's urban Nantong and there's rural Nantong. It was outside.
Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry to confuse you. There's no way we'll make that mistake.
Okay.
We've been to Shanghai, we know it's like this. The school of children from the periphery of the school. They weren't all that rural, but they were certainly not completely urban.
So I would like to follow up.
Yeah.
There's this.
Do you want to come to the microphone? You're not talking to them.
I know I was close to you guys in this. I feel like, there's sometimes somebody will say things like, so-and-so has been called a racist, but now I'm not saying they're a racist, but as soon as you do that, you raise a question in the mind of the listener. Wait, what's going on here? And I feel you guys are doing the exact same thing with your three discourses. Sometimes you treat them as just discourses, and sometimes you treat them as actually embedded in people. If you listen,
No, we're not doing that.
You're saying you're not doing that. We just did it in response to that question. So in order to...
Well, it's not intentional. Go on.
In order to kind of dig at this a little bit, I want to ask you this question. Okay? How... and it sort of relates to your question about this nice 3x3. Wouldn't the world be lovely if you could empirically demonstrate that? But wait, we're not doing empirical work. But if we could do empirical work, the question I'm asking is, how malleable are those discourses? How easy are they to change? Can you change them in a week? Can you rush into a community that has an overarching sense of compliance and just brush it away and change it to something else? Or can you, more likely, can you take a more critical awareness and do something in that community where everybody draws back and becomes, once again, compliant? Now the question is, are there people who are actually more stable and resilient, so that in fact these things are actually characteristics of individuals and not just these things floating around there in the air?
You're asking, You're asking an important question, Bob, and it's useful to raise it, but I think we're being quite careful, as we should be in all our parts of the study, to look at how people are talking about things. We're actually looking at the available narratives and discourses that are invoked by kids, by teachers in this context. Now, we didn't have time to go into this in detail, it's all appropriate in this context, but one of the things that we're interested in is, for example, if we find discourses or narratives that seem to be not available in the work we've done in other countries, that's very interesting. If we find that none of my British studies or Bob's American studies have we seen this particular discourse or narrative evoked, this is very interesting. And so that in itself is that discourse available in the culture? Another question is, it may be that a lot of people in the Chinese context do actually evoke this particular discourse, along with many others. More than would do so, one or two might do it in Britain or America. We're not at that point, we can discuss it, but we can look at that, but we haven't got that data. We hope to do more research in China to be able to elaborate this. But I think Bob is quite right. It's very clear, we're not talking about people. We're talking about stories that people draw upon from their culture in making sense. Now, we've seen many people will draw on more than one story. But what we're interested in looking what that story is, and what you're doing with your next, you're not saying these kids would behave in this way. You're saying these kids, in the cultural context they're talking, think it's appropriate to produce a particular kind of story about not destroying the ratty shoes kid self-esteem. Now, whether the actual kids think that and will behave like that actually isn't the point. The point is, in that culture, and not in the same way in the American culture, kids seem to think normatively maintaining self-esteem and maintaining classroom harmony is what matters. It's not about a relationship between what they do. That's a different kind of research. It's saying, let's look at the culture. What the culture tells us is available. What the culture tells us is appropriate. Because the kids talk about it as if it's completely normative, or the teachers talk about it as if it's completely normative. And that's the focus of the kind of research we're doing. That's basically what cultural research is. It's not about, I mean, it's interesting whether certain individuals are more likely to be compliant and resist doing anything else. You know, like the conservatives in this country always remain conservative, while they sometimes become liberals or are liberal on some points of view. But analysing cultural discourse, conservative discourse in this country tells us something about American culture, conservative discourse. Even if particular individuals can shift in and out of it over time or in the same conversation. Our focus is on how people are talking about things. It's not about looking at individuals, it's looking about the resources they are drawing upon to make sense of their world.
You sort of see that in Indiana in the last week.
Exactly.
It was easy to take a hard right stand for a while. There's no skin in the game. But as soon as the NCAA said they're going to pull out of the state and everything, all of a sudden only the hardcore narratives remain.
So there's interesting questions about, and there's a completely separate question we're not asking, which is which people maintain particular kind of narratives. That's not the question we're asking, it's important to be there. We're saying one of the narratives is revoked from the religion. So I think at that point we should move on, because our next speech, our next four talks, actually pick up in different ways some of the important questions Bob raised. So we have a short break while we put people's PowerPoints on the screen, and if you want to come to break for 5 minutes, we'll come back and go for a second session.
That's right.
How do you pull people in if they're outside? Two minutes on before getting, and then we have some people haven't come back yet. I'd like to go and chase them up.
So I mean, you kind of see people a little, I mean, the last session can be very fungible.
Not true. I'm only just congregating back to encourage the return back. But if they're outside thinking, should they come back? Maybe I'm an authoritarian government. Then of the party, perhaps. If anybody hasn't signed the sheet, please do so, because we really want to make sure that anybody who's interested in further contact with the Civic and Moral Education initiatives on our list. So we'd like to make sure that sign the sheet. Perhaps we could take around and text them. Right, I think we will start again because we can do that in again. I'm delighted to open the second session where our four speakers are not talking about our Shanghai Nanfang project, talking about a very wide variety of different pieces of research and thinking about various aspects of China, values, education, and broad issues. Our first speaker is Lin Jiang. Lin Jiang is a postdoctoral student in the education school in the concentration of cultures, institutions, and society. And she graduated from Harvard College, with a BA in psychology. Her current research, in fact, focuses on educational experiences of youth in China, particularly those of migrant children and rural left behind children. But we gather she's also contributed to the other project that we're working on, which was mentioned by Bob. However, what we're going to talk about today is her undergraduate thesis, which is absolutely fascinating. And again, we talked a bit about already about the importance of culture and why culture can offer very different narratives, very different resources of stories and narratives that can frame how people make meaning. And I'm delighted that she was able to join this panel because I think it was very, very fascinating and actually in many ways very surprising to me.
Thank you very much, Helen, for this very kind introduction. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to be standing here and share with you some of my past work and some of the ideas that I found very interesting. So, as Helen said, this presentation will be based on mostly my undergraduate thesis research. Is that this good now?
Sure.
Okay. Please let me know.
Do you want to use this?
It might be better actually.
It's really better.
I'll do it.
If you're not close to the, if you don't move over and move.
Yeah,
So that
Sure.
Should I
just speak into it. You got to really be close to it. Just the fact that it's there that you need.
Okay.
Let's talk about it.
I can also just speak louder.
This is how we help, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So as Helen said, this presentation is mostly based on my undergraduate research in the psychology department here at Harvard. But today I will focus more on the cultural side, both because of the constraint of time and also for the interest in this group. So the overall question that I was interested in before heading into this comparison of Tibetans, Han Chinese, and Americans was really how culture plays into our moral judgment, particularly psychological processes through which we make these judgments. But I wouldn't really start to talk a lot of theory. I'm actually going to ask you all to listen to a story, and then I'll ask a question like I did to most of my participants in the study. So I'll actually need you to bear with me for a minute as I talk through, and then I'll be prepared to answer questions. So a runaway trolley is speeding down a track. There are 5 people trapped on the track. If nothing is done, the runaway trolley will soon hit and kill all the 5 people. Joe is standing on a footbridge over the track, between the trolley and the 5 trapped people. There is a man wearing a big backpack standing between the man and There's a man wearing a big backpack standing next to Joe. And right now, the only way to stop the trolley is to push the man with the backpack from the footbridge onto the train track. So this man with the backpack will be killed, but his body and his backpack, because they're very heavy, will stop the trolley before it hits the 5 people. Joe is not big enough to stop the trolley himself, even if he had chosen to jump. And he doesn't have enough time to take down the man's backpack and just throw that down. So now Joe is in a very difficult situation. He needs to decide whether he wants to intervene and throw the person off and save the 5 people, or does he want to bystand and just watch the 5 people be killed. So now it's your time to make a decision. So do you think it is morally acceptable for Joe, this person, to push the man with the backpack in order to save the 5 people? So I'll give you 5 seconds. I want to see a show of hands. How many people would think it is morally acceptable to push?
Can we ask a question?
Yes, please. Clarifying question.
What is the probability of certainty that will stop the trade? Is it a 50-50 chance? A 90% chance?
In this scenario, we're assuming certainty, absolute certainty. And I appreciate that question because I also not familiar with it because, not surprisingly, we all participants asked me that question. As Bob, 6th grader, suggested.
I think this is, couldn't Joe also get himself in front of the
Too small.
That's what I just said. It wouldn't work because he's too light, and he didn't have enough time to take down the backpack. So if you were willing to assume that the only way to save these 5 people right now is to push this person off, and I saw another hand.
Yeah, I have a question. What were the 5 people doing?
This is all the information I'm going to provide. You can see how this could go wrong. It did many times.
One last question is, how old are the 5 people?
That's all the information that we have. 5 people versus 1. Given all the very limited information that we presented here, if Joe had pushed a man, to save the 5 people, would you consider it morally acceptable? Can I see a show of hands? Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, last one. Regarding the trolley.
Some critic will say it's morally unacceptable to ask this question because you're putting a person into a very difficult situation. He has to kill anyone anyway. So how would you respond to that critic?
Yeah, I think right now I would just have to ask you to trust Harvard's IRB that I have convinced them that I am not putting anybody into any hazard or psychological harm by doing my study, which I did. Just one last time, can I just show a quick show of hands? Do you think it will be morally acceptable for this person to push? So get about like a quarter of people here. Okay. Okay, and who think it's not okay? Absolutely not okay. So about half. I guess there's about a quarter here who's feeling unsure and didn't raise their hand in both cases. So this question has been asked to many people because it's actually a very popular tool that's used by social psychologists and moral psychologists in this country. So in America, this is a very well-studied story called the trolley dilemma. And usually in America, the ordinary American tends to say no. So about overall, we aggregate over many studies, about 70% of people will say it's absolutely not okay, it's terribly wrong to do such a thing, and only about 30% would be able to say yes, even if we can save 5 people. So why is this particular scenario, it's kind of stupid, and it's unrealistic. There's no reason that you would think in real life you're going to be in this situation in any case. But why is this so interesting, and why so many people study it? To a large extent, it's mostly particularly American psychologists have been using this, and it draws a lot because it has a lot of resonance with our Western philosophical tradition. So, if we say, who will say, why would you say it's okay to push? If you ask philosophers here in America, general, in modern Western society, people probably cite a few different opinions. Like this guy called German Bentham. We have written, it is the greatest happiness, the greatest number, that is the measure of right and wrong. Therefore, if you can perform this one action, and 5 people will be able to live, and 1 instead of 5 people will be able to live instead of 1, then it produces more happiness. Therefore, this action is right. And you also have John Stuart Mill in a similar tradition who says, action are right in the proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to reduce the reverse of happiness. And these people, in short, we would just call them utilitarian philosophers here. And you can probably, they probably sound very familiar, as you can see a lot of public policies also, and personal, moral philosophy are justified with the similar principles. But another side of people who said, don't push, this guy, Kant, Immanuel Kant, very influential Enlightenment philosopher, who said, you always have to treat each person as an end and not as a means only. Therefore, if you're pushing this guy from the bridge, then you're treating him as a means and not as a life and an end in himself. And secondly, you should always act on the maxim in which, at the same time, if you will want that, it should become a universal maxim, which in this action also doesn't apply, because you don't want people to be pushing other people off the bridge. You don't want yourself to be pushed off that bridge by other people. And therefore, the moral worth of an action really comes from the motive. An act is moral only if it is done for the sake of the moral law. This is a very strong claim. You probably don't hear it as much in popular talk, but Kant's usual idea of there are certain standards of right and wrong, and you should adhere to them, and things that comply with these standards are therefore worth doing and right and should be pursued, should be celebrated, and the others should be condemned and seen as evil. That idea is very prevalent, and they call it the ontology line of moral philosophy. And kind of in contemporary Western philosophical debate, utilitarian philosophers or consequentialist philosophers and deontological philosophers are really kind of construct the major duality
in Western moral philosophy, and which is also why this particular child study is so interesting, because it exactly picks the difference between people who hold these two kinds of views. Therefore, it has been, like, psychologists use it a lot to just try to see, okay, if you change the circumstances within which people are responding to these things, does it change their view? And also, is it associated with their other characteristics, like their political association? And often, it's just a very popular tool. So what I did here is to try to take this kind of classical Western moral dilemma to a few other places. And here I went to Lhasa in Tibet, and also a few other Tibetan cities and rural areas. I also did some studies in Guangzhou in China, which is a coastal city in southeastern China, and also where I was born and grew up in. And I also got 2 samples here in Boston. So the format of the study is kind of street questionnaire with a combination of interview section. So they did respond to the question. They did multiple choices questions, but then I also gave them a chance to really talk through their reasoning of why they would make the choice that they did. And today what I'm presenting is kind of especially their response to this question, and also some of the qualitative in their responses. So just before I show the next slide, anyone would want to make a guess in terms of if you go and ask a Tibetan monk, or if you go and ask a Chinese, what would they say?
I would say the monks are more deontological, that they obey more universal laws than materialistic things.
Thank you very much for your voluntary hypothesis. I think that's very reasonable, and to a large extent is what I was kind of expecting when I went and do the study. But instead, this is what we see. So the darker color of the bar shows the percentage of approval. And from left to right, you see Tibetan monks, lay Tibetans, Han Chinese, lay Americans, and American Christian ministers. I just give you about 5 seconds to absorb.
Say yes, push, is that right?
Yes, the dark color is proportionally yes. In short, 82% of the Tibetan monks out of the 47 Tibetan monks who participated said that it is morally acceptable to push the person off of the bridge. And as most people will be kind of surprised, this was I and my thesis advisor. So of course the question comes down to why this is the case. And the natural thing to do next is to look at people's responses. So for lay Americans, it's the way they justified their responses, which is also consistent with what I presented earlier, which is about 70% will say it's not okay, and only about 20 to 30% said it is okay. So they cited kind of no individual has a right to determine another person's life and death without consent, and one life is as important as 5. Principles used to justify pushing in this case, but also be used to justify horrible acts like terrorism or holocausts. So these are very much, you can see how they fall in, they're aligned with the utilitarian and theological arguments. And from Han Chinese, surprisingly, we don't really have a typically Chinese answer to this, to these things. What they say is very similar to what Americans would say, except you see more of a very interesting response. What is the background of the scientists why people want to trap prisoners and send us to death? That changes the response, which is also, as I think about what were the questions that came up when I asked the question to this audience just now, questions about how old are they, what they're doing there, these contextual questions that kind of help to evaluate the worth of each option were asked a lot more often than in the States and in Tibet. However, here are 3 Tibetan responses. I'll just read them quickly because I think it will help you. It's very rich. The most important thing in judging is intention and motivation, not the other things, like the form of action. They killed to save others, then he wouldn't have very heavy bad consequences. But if he had killed others because he's angry, afraid, or for his own interest, then he will have very heavy bad karmic consequences. Another participant. It is okay, but if there are my relatives in there on the rail, it wouldn't be okay for me to push, because then I'm hurting others for my own desire. Another participant. It is a great act of merit. referring to the action of being willing to push. So these are very profound responses that are, for me, very unexpected in many ways. And also you can see how different they are from the previous American and non-Chinese responses that we have seen. And they also, some of the Tibetan monks cited some stories from the sutras to support their argument. I'm just going to read one brief story that I identified through their references. So Makurani, a Bodhisattva ship captain at sea on a long voyage, discovers a thief on board who is about to murder his 500 fellow passengers, all merchants. The captain finds himself in a moral quandary, for if he tells the merchant of the thief's plan, they will certainly kill the thief and thereby come to suffer terrible karmic consequences for their violent act. If he does nothing, 500 will die, and their murderer will suffer the karmic consequences. The only solution, is for him to kill the thief himself, and in doing so, accept the karmic retribution that will follow his violent act, so as to save the thief from the much worse fate that will result from his own killing of 500 men. Paradoxically, and not insignificantly, however, precisely in sacrificing himself for the good of another, the Bodhisattva escapes the negative karma normally associated with killing, and indeed, as we will know, eventually attains Buddhahood. The thief, meanwhile, dies to be reborn in paradise. This is from the Student Sutra, which is a very influential sutra in the Mahayana tradition in Tibetan Buddhism. And I don't really have enough time to go much deeper into this very fascinating and intriguing cultural conversation, but just very brief discussion of potential implications, especially for our discussion today. So these different responses clearly show that there are different forms of moral thinking both within and across countries. And the traditional Western and paradigmatic way of thinking and dualistic frameworks versus what we see in the Tibetan participants, the narrative type of reasoning, and a much more dialectic way of dealing with the relationship between motive, consequences, and all these factors. And of course, it's a strong, poses a lot of challenges to the universal tendencies in a lot of the modern psychology research. And more specifically to our discussion regarding civic and moral education in China today, it really brings to see Tibet is probably not within the scope of your consideration when you think of education in China for a lot of people. But if you zoom into all these ethnic groups within China and all these different regions, you can potentially see all the different narratives within the country, and also how do you reconcile that when you're trying to think about what is a good moral education, a civic education for this nation. And also secondly, kind of the idea of Western infiltration, which is a big obsession of the CPC and the Chinese government for people who are familiar with the political discourse. And you can kind of also see that in the Han Chinese responses. It's a relatively young sample in how they represent a lot of the Western thinking instead of kind of what you would consider the Confucian type of philosophy. That's what we're not seeing in here. So these are just some food for thoughts.
A couple of questions for Shin. Yes.
Hi, I have a question. I'm a Buddhism of Chan tradition, and I have a little bit of a critical kind of condition of the psyche of this culture, which is killing of the people. So, what is the nature of that? We know his personality.
The background?
Yes, someone. We do not know.
So that's that is one of the important characteristics about the data that's used in psychological research, is that we assume we know no background of this person.
Okay, right. So here's my question. I just want to confirm with you on that point. I would, it would be a more possible, so we have, what's his name, Bonhoeffer is the Christian theologian who wanted to murder people during the Nazi regime. So I would say that the killing of the Nazi people and that it saves so many people of Holocaust. That's a reason. That is more according to the scripture that we just cited. But then about lowering the personal integrity of either side, I think that's justified. That's not anybody's on that. So it's like you're killing someone and you probably get killed or you go down to have negative trauma, but then that would immediately spring, like immediately fell into hell, and then because of the way we saw the intentionality of the mind, so you come back up right.
Yes.
But that is not that's not.
So you're saying that Joe's action of pushing the person is not noticed about that?
Well,
or versus in the ship captain?
Yeah, the ship captain, the feed. Pulling out the feed is the critical decision. Determinative factor.
That's interesting.
So I'm not sure if the Tibetan monks that just mentioned they are really honest.
Yeah, thank you very much for your response, and also recognize that it is two, like Chinese Zen Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism kind of have two slightly different canons of sutras, and so the ship captain story that I just cited, it was actually indeed in the Skewing Means Sutra, as he said. So there may be different interpretations.
There's no problem with the sutra. In the scripture, there's no problem, but if you look at the deeper meaning of the scripture, that's the critical alternative nature that you want to make a decision. So that person has to be bad, has to be risking the life of the $500.
Yes.
So that's equivalent to Hitler. But then the backpacker is not risking other people's life. He doesn't do anything. So that's not related to that. That's what I'm trying to talk. There's only one Dharma, and that marks the paradigm of how to make a decision.
I think we should, I'm sure you have lots of discussion about this in the final session. I can see it coming in the final session. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is again Roxanne, talking about a different project.
Start. Yeah. So, I'm going to talk about the work of a doctoral student, Zhuzhao, which Helen pointed out was our project manager. She came to the Harvard Graduate School of Education in 2003 and graduated in 2011. And we were fortunate enough to have our resources from the Harvard China Fund. And so she became our project manager and subsequently was awarded a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Calgary, which allowed her to write her book. I can tell you, I don't need to cover it. I was just looking at the The reason I don't need this is because the last conversation sent a little bit of chills down my spine, because it represents, what if you are talking about something you really don't know anything about? All right? Now, I'm not saying Tim doesn't know anything about all forms of Buddhist theology, but I don't know very much about all forms of Chinese education. But I am still willing to take the risk of talking a little bit about the work that we've been doing, and it's in the context of the reform movement in Chinese education today. Okay, and I'm going to assume most of you know what is proceeding, or what has happened in Chinese education over the past 40 years. And I'll simply oversimplify the view. Okay, and I want to start on a personal note, okay? Because I think it's relevant. Okay? When I was a boy, like so many other young children in the United States, I was told to finish eating the food on my plate. Okay? And I was not a very good eater. And I was told, ordered, requested, pleaded to finish my food, because there were millions and millions of starving children in China. No, this is absolutely not made up. In fact, everybody was told that who wasn't a good eater. Okay? Who presumably would welcome the opportunity to eat what I wasn't eating. Okay? There was no compassion intended whatsoever. Okay? I was not being asked to care about these Chinese children, only to pity them in the service of my growing up nutritionally healthy by not being in their shoes. Okay? No political implication was being transmitted. Whether communist or not, China was simply a big country with a large population, most of whom did not have enough to eat, and implicitly the comparative would read something like American exceptionalism. You're lucky to be here, so eat your food. Back then, this did not make China sound like an exciting place to visit, let alone live. By the time I was a young man, however, with children of my own, I began to hear my Jewish aunts and uncles complain that the Chinese students who were moving into our neighborhood did nothing but study, and were surpassing my bookish younger cousins in academic achievement, even if they were not bragging at that time about getting good grades. So if you understand American culture, you can imagine Jewish parents complaining about other people being Swedish. You'll see somewhat of the irony. Okay, so Zhu Zhao has written a book called Competition and the Quest for Compassion in Chinese Schools. It's a book that the journey to complete that book began with her work on her dissertation. She came here early on, in 2003, because she saw the stress and difficulties that youth like herself were going under in order to be successful, both for themselves and for their nation state. Now, this is not new to most of you, probably not new to any of you, to understand this. But she came here because her vision was to think about ways to design programs to prevent the sequelae of that kind of overemphasis on academics in youth. And what I like to voice through her, I think I can say this with my own authenticity, but it's really her voice coming through me, if you will, is that you folks who come from that region are the survivors of that system, but not the victims of that system. Okay? Now, she argues very convincingly that in the China of 2015, youth in Shanghai and elsewhere in the country need, some would say desperately, the skills required for the promotion of their holistic self, not a construct unfamiliar to Chinese culture. And then in a certain sense, once again, I'm not voicing this as me being a critical theorist of Chinese education, okay? Because in fact, in some of our writings, we actually see incredible similarities between the policies being made in China over the last 40 years and the policies made in the United States around, one could say, if one was cynical, building the wealth of the country on the backs of the success of the children, the academic success of the children. Okay. But what's interesting, and it's everywhere, in fact, it was today or yesterday in Thomas Friedman's op-ed piece, the Chinese Politburo, the Chinese Party, over the last 10, 15 years, Zhu claims, and has the evidence in her analysis, in her book, has tried desperately to rectify, to recalibrate that policy and make pure, unadulterated competition somehow make it more ameliorated to a holistic child education program. In fact, Friedman talks about I dramatize this a bit, the raid of the communist officials coming down to a preschool and a kindergarten in Shanghai and insisting that the teachers stop pushing those children so hard to do their reading and math. Okay. Yet, what Xu says is that policy has largely had very little effect at the grassroots. Okay? And the reasons are not so difficult to understand. It's my normative judgment that no one should impose their ideologies on a country on the backs of their own children. Okay? No one should say, I believe in busing, you're going to get a shitty education because I believe in busing my son. That's a very provocative comment, but I've heard so many of my peers say, I wish I had not pushed my own ideology on the backs of my children. And I say that because essentially that's what Chinese parents are saying. Yeah, we have an acronym, NIMBY. NIMBY? Anybody know what NIMBY means?
Not in my backyard.
Not in my backyard. Okay, and so so the question is, if one sees the negative sequelae of over-focused educational policy that is highly competitive without engaging any passion, if one believes that actually in the 21st century, the kinds of skills one is going to need in order to be successful at the individual and at the state level are communication skills, cooperation skills, working together skills. Then what Xu would say is that the Chinese educational system must change because it's not going to succeed. She's not talking about manners. Chinese families all say they want their children to be mannerly and be appropriate and be nice in a manner. Anyway, but manners are very superficial. They don't go into our soul. How much time do we have with this? 5 minutes? All right. So, I think that's the claim of the book. The first part of the book is an analysis of the policies that have been published in China over the past 40 years around competition in the country. And then the middle of the book is largely the voices of the youth and of the parents around these issues of the relative importance of competition, cooperation, and moving toward compassion as a characteristic, a trait, a norm, a discourse of Chinese people, to recalibrate back to that discourse, which is what I think may be one of the connections to some of the earlier work we talked about. So, academics are very good at identifying problems, okay? But they're less well-trained and able to not only propose solutions, and even less so to implement. And so you would have to move from being compliant to being a little cynical, not be so compliant, and you'd have to become somewhat skeptical, which is a very positive character trait. It's open-mindedness in a way. It sees problems. But then there are two more steps. You have to move to what Helen and I are fighting over, as whether the discourse is actually critical, meaning can you take a stance that not only just meta-analyzes your system, but brings a critical perspective to your system. And I would argue that if you go through all those steps, you will get to compassion. And Sim told me yesterday, yeah, that's what the Buddha says. And so I take that as a good theory with the opportunity to empirically test it, if you can get the right measures. What we propose in the third section of the book is a strategy. And the strategy is essentially to figure out ways to integrate ethics, education, and engagement in this case. I mean, Helen rightly says we're not only talking about schools, but in this case I want to talk about schools. It somehow integrate those three competencies into your pedagogy. I'm going to give you one example of this that we write about, and I will confess beforehand, I pose this because I'm not embracing a narrative of wariness. What is the others you got? Huh? But I can't hear you.
Wasteful or wishful?
This is certainly not wasteful. It's highly, one minute, highly efficient. It's not wary, but it is wishful. So let's take the case of the Three Gorges. Okay? What is the story of the Three Gorges? Anyway, does anybody know the story of the Three Gorges? Yes, please.
You mean how it got started, or the
Anything.
I thought you were talking about the water.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I'm from Chongqing, and Three Gorges, as I've learned, secondhand from.
When did you learn this?
Growing up, I've been there when I was very young. So it's upstream, downstream from Chongqing. It's basically three interlocked gorges that have increasingly narrower waterway that becomes more and more clear as you go upstream. There's a lot of historical sites around them and natural habitat. And then there's a dam that was designed and subsequently built. And in Chongqing, the city that was most impacted because of the mass migration of population into the city. That's about all I know about.
All right, that's great. So that's the educational domain. Okay, you can probably
learn a little more, right? I know a little more than that about it, okay, because I've studied it. But that's education. What's the ethics of this is that it flooded 400 square miles of a homeland to people. And the question is, did the government make the right choice? Or what's the debate about? Okay? So this is the kind of integration of ethics and education, which given that I have about 22 seconds left, would just leave you with, I'm over it. Well, you can't count her time. So, in other words, what I'm saying is the very same kind of dilemmas that we used earlier to think mainly about social issues can really also use to think about social studies issues. And these educational programs would be very much oriented to promoting vocabulary, a lot of vocabulary you can learn, very much oriented to discussion and debate, and very much oriented to writing your own position. And so we're in a sense arguing that if you can integrate some of the social domain into the educational domain, you may have the opportunity to broaden the horizons of the kids who are now clearly under extreme pressure and under risk, which I will end on a somewhat sour note, which actually you now see in the suicide rates in China, which are going up incredibly in the last 10 years.
And that's a specific question for Bob. I think we'll move on to the next speaker, but we're accepting the pick up the very important points Bob made in the last session. Okay, our next speaker is Dai Sun. Dai Sun is currently lecturer and PhD candidate, presidential fellow at Boston University. And his research focuses on civil society, social capital, and Chinese politics, including us about moving up broadly society. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Helen, and it's great to see familiar faces here today. When I was growing up, I was told to eat well because there were hungry people in Africa. And so I think what the lessons learned here is that there is a rural and urban divide in China. That I grew up in Hangzhou, the capital of Zhejiang province on the East Coast. And when I was growing up, I had no worry about my next meal or a place to sleep. Also, the story of the Three Gorges Dam. My father actually took me on vacations because he's a professor and he has summer vacations too. And so I recall when I was 4 years old, he took me to Fengjie and pointed to me that let's take a picture here. It is very important that you remember this moment because a few years later, this will be underneath water. So the point I want to make is that civic education is not only in the public domain. What you learn from your parents, what happens in the household, what happens in your family is also very important. So I'm going to start with what I want to present today. I am a political scientist by training, so I'm going to talk about the more broader picture about civil society and state-society relations in China. Yes, the conception of civil society in modern context is always between the state and the society, but it's not always the case. So I want to first very briefly talk about the literature, and particularly the only literature that's relevant to this research, by saying that it's not always the case. For example, if we start with ancient Greek societies, where Aristotle came up with the concept of colonia politique, or societas civilis, later translated. It is more of a political community of free and equal individuals, or equal citizens. There's no distinction between the state and the society because all citizens are in-ruling and being ruled at the same time. And then in feudal Europe, there is the concept of duality, but it's not between the state and society, but rather the prince on the one side and land, people, nation on the other side. It was not until the mid-18th century Europe where the concept of a society that checks and monitors or limits the state came into being, and there are scholars arguing or depicting this structure in various ways. So, for example, Habermas gave the description of the public sphere, where knowledge and views are exchanged. More recent conception started from the democratic opposition to socialist party states, particularly in post-communist societies in Eastern Europe. So, starting from mid-18th century, the concept was really a society that monitors and checks or limits the state, but rather not having any intention to replace the state. While the more modern conception is that you are initiating a democratic political movement that has the intention to have the potential to replace the state. Now, so more and more we're seeing this duality between the state on the one hand and society on the other hand. What I'm arguing here is that what happens within society can also be very important. So let me just give you a very simplistic sketch of what I was just talking about. So you have the state on the top, which would include the police, the courts, the authority, and then you have the private sphere at the bottom. So you might have the individuals, sometimes families and households would be included, and anything in between can potentially be argued as the public sphere. And different scholars would have different things happening in that sphere. For example, Adam Smith might argue the free market is there, or Karl Marx might have the political society there, or Habermas have the Öffentlichkeit, the public sphere, where you can exchange views and knowledge, or it can be the Tocqueville's voluntary association. So various literatures will talk about different things. But we have focused too much on the duality between the state and society. What I'm presenting is my research that talks about how the private sphere interacts with the public sphere, because there's a lot of literature talking about in China, particularly how the state is blurring the line between the authority itself and the public sphere. My argument is that we should also pay attention to how the public sphere is also blurring the line from the bottom. So I want to situate this on the global context first, looking at how people's confidence are in NGOs. So you will see that from both the 5th wave and 6th wave of the World Value Survey, the confidence in charitable and humanitarian organizations is slightly higher than government. And it's consistent in developing countries or developed countries throughout. And also the Brookings institution in 2008 did a research, argued that we are actually at a historical low of public confidence in charities at that moment. And you look at the trend from 2007 to 2012, you will see that the blue line on top is NGOs, and the green line at the bottom is government. So it is very obvious that people have more trust or confidence in NGOs over government globally. Now, we have to look at the methodology, how the sample is collected. So that particular survey from the Elements Trust Barometer, it actually surveys 500 respondents in US and China and 200 in other countries. It is a very elite sample, aged from 25 to 64, college educated in the top quarter household income per age group. and reported significant media consumption and so forth. I recall a gentleman here asked a question about Nantong and Shanghai, whether you really consider that urban. So I'm going to present the very rural regions in Sichuan, where I collected my data. So all the counties, so there are 43 counties, about 160 villages that I surveyed. All of them are west of the Chengdu-Kunming Railroad. And so that design is particularly to look at the actual rural area in the most remote places in China. And so we interviewed or surveyed various people with various backgrounds. And so here are some pictures. Now just look at the sample. Gender is quite balanced, almost the same between men and women. Age group, you will see that the average, the mean and median is all about 47, and the education you will see, the mode will be people who have finished middle school, but you also have a lot of people who did not go to school at all, and some people who finished elementary school only. Now I asked them well, in the survey there are over 50 questions, and because of the time limit, I'm only going to present 3 very relevant questions here. So one question is, I asked them, who would you look for help when you're in need? And the other question is, if you have to choose between the government and social organizations, particularly NGOs, who would you choose between the two? So look at the first question, who would you look for help? And you will see that more than 50% answer that I will choose the government. You look at 18% who would only look at, who would only get the help from themselves. They don't care about anyone else help, and they do not expect anyone else help. And about 23% their answer is media. Sorry, I just got the screen minimized. I don't know how to touch it again. Oh, okay, good, great, thank you. So 23% family and friends. So you will see that about 41% remains at looking for help within the private sphere, and only 2% answered I'm looking for help from social organization. 4% said media. Okay. If you break up between the two genders, the results are almost the same. So a little bit over half that would look for help from the government. Although men tend to rely on helping themselves, while women would ask for help from friends and family more often, but the look for help data from the private sphere almost remains the same, about 42%, and only 1 to 2% would look for for help from social organizations. Now, if I force the question a little bit further by asking them having to choose between government and social organizations, the results is even more surprising. That 71% said I prefer service from the government. 7% said both, and 14% said social organizations. So it's about 1 to 5 ratio. And you look at the gender breakup, it is almost the same between men and women of their preferences. So the next step I did is looking at the breakup of people's attitudes of the government and how it's related to this preferences. And so I looked at people who answered the question. So I asked them to rate the local government on a 1 to 5 scale. And so here is the data from those people who answered 1 or 2. Basically those people who have negative feelings about the local government. How would they view when they have a choice between local government and NGOs? Well, it did not change very much. 66% said I would still have a service or a preference from the government, even though they really do not like the government. they still prefer the government over civil society organizations. Going back to the previous question, who would you ask for help among various groups? Now the number that would pick government is slightly reduced from 52% to 40%, but you did not see a big difference in those who would look for help from the media or from social organizations. So how can we explain this? I also did some in-depth interviews asking these villagers what are the reasons. Well, one might be membership, that they really didn't get exposed to any social organizations, or they're not participating in these collective behaviors. You look at membership of humanitarian charitable organizations from the global data, China is actually very low. The number not a member of any organization in comparison with Taiwan, United States. Japan is another anomaly. And there's a big literature on post-communist countries, and you will see that it is lower than Western countries, but still the number is not a member of other organizations. The number is lower than China. The data in Sichuan, where I collected in the countryside, is actually 84.82%. So it's better than China in general. And I have another paper doing a large N quantitative analysis, arguing that earthquake actually helped stimulating the civil society in Sichuan, but still it is not a very positive number. Second explanation I was told was the mismatch of criteria, and I did a few case studies, so that there is two different criteria that people would mention. One is higher standards of living, which is the absolute gain, and one is fairness. So when NGOs, particularly international NGOs, are doing work in these rural areas, they would specifically look at those people who are in need the most, and how you can get the best outcome from, or the largest effect with the least amount of money. So the effectiveness is very important. However, in local villages, people care about fairness. Why did my neighbor get 5,000 yuan and I only got 2,000? I think we're just as poor. And so the local government actually does a very good job maintaining fairness between households, while NGOs, without being understood by the local villagers, would thought as treating these local villagers unfairly. There are also structural reasons, or you look at the comparison between the government and NGOs. People answer that the government has legitimacy, and the government has policy tools that they can make rules to affect our lives, while NGOs are basically having to apply to these rules. Government has adequate resources, and the government has some certainty that they will always be here, while NGOs, sometimes they come and sometimes they go. We cannot rely on them. And the argument about fairness versus absolute gain, and different expectations about the government and NGOs, that they think the government are there to take care of them, while some of the NGOs it's being professionalized, and so people are actually earning money. And in China, people see if you're doing charity work and if you're earning money, that's a amoral or immoral thing. And so treating NGO as a profession can be a negative thing for some of those local villagers. From the very simplistic sketch, as I argued that we focus a lot on state and the public sphere, or state and society, it is also important to pay attention of how the private sphere is interacting with this public sphere. Lucien Pai and Robert Weller and a few other scholars have talked about civility, which is not only in the gentility or virtue of these individuals, but the norm of practices or interacting with other people being very important in civil society, or in a nascent civil society. So here, from the data that I have collected, I think it is missing that people do not have some norm of practices or interacting with each other. Even when they're participating in some organizations, they're just going in and going out without making any connections, without increasing trust or building norms. There are, however, some exceptions where the private sphere interacts with social organizations very well, and that's through the state authority. So basically, either these organizations set up an office in the local government, or the organization is basically led by a local official, so that the trust actually channels through the state towards the social organizations. And I gave this talk at VU last week, and there's a panel, 3 of us. We all were very pessimistic of the future of civil society in China. So I do want to end with a somewhat optimistic note here at Harvard today. So my data from urban regions and rural regions is drastically different. Looking at, for example, Chengdu, especially those who have started organizing or started running their social organizations, they have achieved a very good relationship with the government at one time, on the one hand, and also being able to assert some autonomy and impose certain practices. So, for example, this is a top of a bicycle garage in the community where this organization has served, and they actually organized the local citizens or people living in this neighborhood to decide what they want to do with the top of this garage. And they formalized the rules to make decisions, and there is procedures. And they actually applied Robert's Rule of Order to make decisions, a very democratic way of how to allocate public resources, how to make decisions for their own communities. And the local government actually is happy with what they're doing, because it actually made the local neighborhood more stable. And the head of this NGO is a retired military soldier, and so he has connections in the government, which gives him legitimacy as well. So I think in the urban regions, I have observed much more boundary testing, boundary spanning of the social organizations, and people actually are willing to give it a try and have very positive experiences with these social organizations. And I want to end here and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
I think there's a particular question. Yes, David, that's all.
I'm sorry, I actually have a question. It's like very specific ones. So, what is considered government in this approach? Like neighborhood communities, and what is what is the questionnaire or questions that respondents are getting as to the government?
You're talking about the survey in rural areas. Yeah. So I mentioned 地方政府 村委会.
Okay, so village committees and
local government and local party committees.
okay.
That's not national.
Not national.
And what kind of help? Like what kind of help? What's the context?
So in the survey, we actually gave them a few examples. So if it's related to healthcare, if it's related to education or public good provision, when you're in need, who would you look for help?
And is it demographically it's more like farmer agriculture group, or what's the occupation?
Majority of them are peasants working in the field, and there are some who have returned from factories after the earthquake because they want to help their community rebuild. But majority of the sample is what you would depict as the rural peasantry.
I think my question comes from why particular, like, is it because of the earthquake, or why is it, why are we seeing, why are we conducting this research in this particular place with this particular group?
Yes, thank you for this question, because I started this project mainly because I was interested in how the earthquake has created a power vacuum in Sichuan province, where a lot of voluntary activities started, and there were formalization of these organizations as well as other institutions. And so I want to see whether this earthquake has triggered civil society building, and it seems that there is a strong correlation of regions that's being hit with earthquake versus regions that has not been hit by looking at social capital, which I use from Patram's variables of looking at trust, norm, membership of organizations, and so forth. So I have an index of dependent variable. But here it's just basically to make a more holistic picture of when we're talking about civil and moral education in China, and I would argue that in rural Sichuan or in the far west regions of China, it could be very different, and we should not ignore that story as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker in this session, I'm very distinguished. Dr. Malik Vandenenda is a visiting scholar here at Fairbanks Center. But she is also founding dean of Amsterdam University College and she's professor in higher education at the University in Amsterdam and also an honorary professor at the University of Cambridge. She's on the member of the board of numerous very distinguished organizations around particularly higher education, which is her primary field. And she's going to talk to us about higher education. Her research focuses on innovation and the impact of globalization on higher education. And she's published widely on how these processes affect higher education systems and institutions, including liberal arts colleges, and regarding governance strategy, curriculum, quality assurance, and ICT integration. She is indeed an expert in China higher education, and I'm looking forward very much to hearing how the issues about globalization in higher education in China reflect on the issue we're talking about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you all for having me here today. So I'm European, Dutch, and I was told to eat, which wasn't easy. With reference to Bangladesh and Vietnam. And we did see a lot of refugees coming from that country to the Netherlands. But water, half of my country would be sea. Instead of land, hadn't we engineered a lot of dikes and other types of barriers in the delta. One more thing about being Dutch and thinking about moral issues in education is that I totally subscribe to what has been said by Helen previously, that it requires the biggest caution. The Netherlands, apart from the water thing, is also known, I think, to have a great colonial past, including dominance over what was taught and learned and which language was spoken in a number of countries much larger than our own. And we continue to do so until in the mid of the 20th century in, for instance, Indonesia. So I couldn't agree more that it is with great caution that we should look at these issues and certainly not prejudgments or Western perspectives at first. So that was my preliminary comment. And, well, I'm not sure I'm an expert on Chinese higher education. I don't think so. My research is in globalization and higher education, and I do speak about that in China on a regular basis. But this is the first time that I speak about Chinese higher education, so tell me when I'm wrong. Despite the rhetoric on globalization, let me say that everywhere, and at least also in China, higher education has a national purpose. And nation states do play and still play a very important role. Yet,
in the 20th century, globalization existed, of course, in previous versions in the 16th and the 19th century. The current version, combined with the knowledge economy, introduces a new type of national interest, if you like. National economic growth for global competition, or national economic growth being dependent on global competition. Success in global competition. So that introduces a whole new approach to education, especially higher education, and that's the human capital approach, which is, of course, a subsequent idea of the concept of the neoclassical theory. Another insight that I share with my colleague Peter Scott from England is that there is a dialectical relationship between globalization and neoclassicism. It is not so, as is often argued by anti-globalists, that universities, like a lot of other public organizations, are just an object or a victim of globalization. Universities can be also subject or key agents of globalization. Let's look at China from these two perspectives, subject-object. Definitely, Chinese higher education policy, since the end of the 90s, the reopening of China, is clearly a response to globalization. Meaning, from that human capital approach, ensuring that it has a well-populated, well-educated population. The special thing is that China is building the fastest growing and the largest higher education system in the world. So for anyone's studying systems, this is already fascinating because it's unprecedented. It builds it in terms of quantity, and the speed at which it has been able to enlarge the enrollments is just amazing. Here's some numbers. At the same time, research, of course, when we talk about universities, we talk about teaching and research. It has now the second largest research budget in the world after the US. It started to work recently on quality, the 985 project on creating world-class universities, the 211 project in excellent universities by merging a lot of small schools, and 2020 blueprint to emphasize quality over quantity in this space. It also works with internationalization as a response to globalization, which is something that we see in a lot of countries, and actually powerfully so by sending a lot of students abroad. You see the number here. More recently, also by trying to attract students, a far smaller number, as you can see, to engage in partnership with foreign institutions, allowing establishment of foreign branch campuses in China, and more recently again, trying to bring back the Chinese, many Chinese who studied overseas. Very unique success so far, I would say. Now the other side, and I'm fascinated in my research and some of my involvement in this, but how China is also playing a role as an agent in the globalization of higher education. One is the Shanghai ranking. You've probably heard of that. And I will be transparent. I'm one of their members of their advisory board. And it's just fascinating to see how, through this ranking, which is officially called the Academic Ranking of World Universities, China is defining the global order and shaping the model, the global model of the world-class university. It has an immense influence on the world in doing this, which was initially meant for internal purposes, by the way. It never intended to affect the world. Another example, more recent, because the Shanghai ranking has been around for 10 years now, very recently, by establishing, bringing for the first time the leading research university associations of the world together in defining what is a research university. And AAU there is the American Association of Universities, and C9 is the Chinese G8 is Australia, and there is a closer look at the challenges of building a system so quickly and so fast. As you can see, there are positive growth areas where we see progress, and there are concerns around autonomy, transparency, funding, quality and position of faculty, ethnic affairs, diversity, questions of colonialism. But we could spend a whole conference on this. But I would like to quote the currently where we say, well, we know this, that China's expansion and rising rankings is unmatched anywhere, whereas its problems in access, equality, and governance are shared everywhere. The main concerns with some of the literature are, for sure, the level of institutional autonomy and academic freedom. Although academic freedom is, I think, one of these concepts that need to be thought through from different perspectives. Quality assurance and institutional cultures of self-improvement. The faculty, the quality of the faculty. Growing enrollment in times of increasing higher rate of unemployment. The growing urban-rural education inequality. We see shrinking number of students from rural areas and rising tuition fees, especially for disadvantaged students in private institutions. So those that come from weaker schools have to pay more for a college education. If we look at the policies, I'm probably not very advanced in my analysis, you could say, or I indeed want to stay away from the normative. So I've tried to map some of the things in terms of paradoxes and perspectives. The paradoxical thing is, first of all, that China is very eager to internationalize, and at the same time very eager to safeguard national education sovereignty, with concerns about cultural colonialism and Western imperialism. Now, the national heritage is that at risk in the face of globalization. China is not alone. China, lots of countries who have that concern. But it is very pronounced, especially since recently this announcement that the discussion of Western values is prohibited in the classroom for the 7 themes, while continuing to send so many students abroad and inviting foreign campuses and foreign faculty on soil. Fostering innovation and reform, while at the same time restraining institutional autonomy and academic freedom, and pushing for standardization, another paradox. Aspiring global leadership in higher education, but still, I should say still, not able to attract foreign elites in terms of elite students, and still sending its own elite to go. Embracing the human capital approach towards education, while ambiguous about the neoliberal capitalist logic underpinning it, at least ambiguous, it seems unclear. And the question, of course, for further development is whether China, as it developed its own model, exceptional model for economic development, will also do so for higher education, or will it in fact follow the Western model? Then to the learning paradox, and then when we get back to the discussion that we have here around what is learned in the ethical and civic values area. China is very aware, like a lot of other states, that for global competitiveness, it should be able to produce more innovative and creative things. Because manufacturing is making place for, well, the added value is not in simple manufacturing. The added value in economics is in the innovation of private services. So you need to educate, you need to produce those skills, what will they refer to 21st century skills. But at the same time, you see cultural factors that may inhibit creativity in the process. Because of the tradition of antiquated knowledge, rote learning, memorization, etc. Confucius versus Socrates. We see, at the same time, the dogma and model of education for national strengths and collective good on very utilitarian viewpoints, and go back to them. And at the same time, a very vivid discourse about general education, which is aimed at liberating and educating the individual to be a greater thinker, an active citizen, a holistic approach to the whole person as we said. Scholars argue that a deeper, from the West, argue that a deeper integration of liberal arts and sciences into the Chinese university model would make the system far more globally influential. This is by the way, said by Jerry Boston from Hong Kong University. Hong Kong just changed its system to include very, very serious liberal arts and sciences. He says China should do the same to be more competitive. But how can ignorant world not copy from the West without the ancient culture, in honor of Chinese indigenous education and principles? A few words to finalize about liberal arts and science education. My research on that stems from the fact that I was indeed founding the liberal arts and science college in the Netherlands, thinking about why is this model coming back to Europe, why is it also in Asia drawing a lot of attention. I think there are three arguments: an epistemological, an economic, and a social moral argument. The epistemological argument is we need interdisciplinarity in learning. We should avoid the people who specialize too early and too much, because the big problems in science and society require interdisciplinary perspective. The economic argument is basically a very utilitarian one, the 21st century skills, everything to do with productivity and also employment. And then there is, of course, the classical humanistic and ethical values and the social moral. So if we work this out in the current curriculum, for instance, we look at a curriculum that is focused on broad themes and big questions that unites the humanities and the sciences, like proposed already in the 60s, but it's known, of course. The 21st century skills, here's a whole list, there's so much literature on that this would be endless. What I always miss in it, but you could probably find it under intercultural skills, is 4 languages. 21st century skills include 4 languages. And that's not made explicitly enough, probably because the literature on it is mostly from Anglo-Saxon country. Take it a little bit for granted, definitely speaking. It's not only 21st century skills that are sometimes said to be soft skills. It is, in my view, the combination of soft skills and STEM skills, which basically goes back to STEM. Sorry about that. The thing is that the two first circles, the upper two circles, you could say, they converge into a global knowledge economy. Everybody would agree that yes, we need interdisciplinarity, we need these 21st century skills, we need science and humanities. This is the agenda for the global knowledge economy. However, the humanistic and ethical values that are packed in person in my liberal arts and science education, they do not easily converge into any global agenda. Certainly not. What we see there, I think, is divergence. Pluralism, perhaps, conflicting values. So to conclude, sorry, this is small, but as I just said, the epistemological and economic arguments, they seem to boost the liberal arts model in China. For sure, China embraces those ideas. And they converge, as I said, in a global agenda. However, the social law dimension, which is much more difficult to define in a global century, that doesn't seem to be characterized by convergence, is more difficult to define. And as was said in your presentation, there is no global morality, no universal morality. I think that's why we do indeed need the dialogue around these things. Back. Another argument is that this third circle, you could say it's a holy trinity. In any case, it's part and parcel of it. Even more so because from research evidence, it is found that the most unique thing out of globalized science education in college is this social role, because the general cognitive skills can actually be learned as well in other pedagogical models. They're not unique for liberal arts education, and presumably better in many cases earlier in secondary education. So the whole argument for liberal science education at college is actually this education at the person and the social and civic context. But we cannot take the whole idea of citizenship for granted to be democratic citizenship in a country like China. But the scope of citizenship in general, in how it should be conceived, is under discussion. It should be discussed. We had a discussion about this in St. Petersburg a couple of months ago. Very vivid discussion about what does citizenship in the context of globalized science education in Russia. Is it national or nationalistic? Is it regional? For China, that would be Asian. It would be Euro-Asian. If I look at the Chinese policies and the big projects of infrastructure, it might be Euro-Asian. Is it global citizenship, as referred to Martin Luther King? Then refer to globalism, culturalism, cosmopolitanism. That's key to the debate in China, as everywhere else. In Europe, and I'm sure that the US has a problem about it, as I find it interesting to read from US research that the global perspective in US global technologies is not particularly overwhelming. So I think these are questions that I'm working on, and I'll finish soon, about the cultural fit of this model and how it can be combined into a model that can work for China. And we will continue this global dialogue on the 21st of May in Shanghai at the Urban Center in a conference organized by the Urban Center.
Take a couple of immediate questions and then we'll move into the discussion. Red.
Hi, I'm a doctoral student here in higher education, and I appreciate you talking about how there's not one conception of a good citizen or a morality that traverses all these cultures. One of the things I do think is universal to the liberal education is critical thinking, and you had it in one triad, but I think it probably streams through them all. And a predicate for that critical thinking is academic freedom, the ability to question our own governments, and consider our own culture critically. How do you see liberal arts and education moving forward in cultures that are not open to academic freedom as we conceive it in the States? And what are some other ways to consider academic freedom that are different than what we commonly do?
That's the main one. And without being postmodernist, but I think that China should find its approach to defining citizenship and cultural and critical cultural approach to citizenship, and hopefully only in this public sphere where that discussion should take place. And well, then we get to your presentations. Education can contribute to that, provided that teachers also feel that that is a positive and constructive contribution to society. And the term critical thinking can be difficult to use. And I must say, also in the European environment, it is sometimes used in very, not in the academic sense of critical thinking, let's put it that way, and being critical per se, which is not always constructive, and which is difficult for teachers, because I recognize a lot of teachers to deal with. We have the University of Amsterdam. It's being occupied now for more than a month by students, not only students, by the way, but, and part of the discussion is about, yeah, but in which way should one expect and stimulate the students to be critical? It's interesting what Nussbaum says about it.
Yeah.
And there, I was listening to you because I think all your students were in secondary school. Right? Sorry, second one.
8th and 11th grade, yes.
Yeah. And Nussbaum says something very particular about students in college. And it is for good reasons that a lot of social protest occurs in and around student communities, but in wonderful countries. So I think that their education is education has a very, very subtle role to play. Still, and especially the teachers, it's difficult. Even our teachers feel so. And they are from the protest generation of the 60s.
I think at this point, I think moving to the general discussion, if you want to take a very brief estimate too, the panel will come onto the platform, and I'm going to ask Jenru to do an introductory overview. I'll introduce him shortly. But in the meantime, I'd like the rest of you to generate, I think, some questions you'd like to ask us to raise discussion. I think it would be, given where we are now, I'm sure you have many questions, so I don't think that I'll ask the panel to make the speeches. I'll ask you to generate the questions, and we will generate discussion from that. So, Hannah would like to come up to the platform. This is Professor at Shandong and Global University during 2010 to 2015. So I'd like Pierre to open the discussion because he has provocative questions to raise based on the content today. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Am I the only person now?
No, you're not.
Well, I came all the way from Southern Illinois to Aubrey and Caution. Basically, I think when this is my point, when talking about development of civil society education, we need to be extremely sensitive to the larger social context of the country and understand we are many roadblocks and resistance facing our work. So I'm going to just outline 7 major challenges in front of us. Number 1, so I don't have a paper, I don't have a PowerPoint, just some talking points. Number 1 point, civic education is not a popular topic right now. It's unwelcomed by the ruling party, the government, and many educators today. It's actually a forbidden taboo in mainstream media, much of the academia, and many schools. Like Helen said, I spent several years as a visiting scholar in some Chinese universities. So this is my personal observation. Of course, this is thanks to the recent tightening ideological control directly from the edict of President Xi Jinping, arguably the most authoritarian leader since Okay. I agree.
No, it's from
there seems to be, well, this is for me, there seems to be an overwhelming involuntary and voluntary submission to power and collective silence among intellectuals. And under this current political tenor. And I think this oppressive environment is certainly very hostile to what we're trying to do. Number two, there seems to be a strong national pressure working against civic education in China. Despite all the problems Chinese people are experiencing in their country, there's also an unmatched pride in what the country has achieved in the past several decades. And unfortunately, I think this pride now works against any perceived or real imposition of foreign ideas, including the very idea of civil society and civic education, which is often considered an exported idea from the West. So China is now officially, we all know, the world's number 2 economy, a real superpower, right? And the government began to vote to say no, and the UN and the world began to listen. So this superpower status, I think, really bringing incredible sense of self-confidence to Chinese people, including ordinary folks. And this self-confidence, unfortunately, again, has become a resistance to further reform and opening up. The communist leadership today is certainly using the country's remarkable economic growth to justify its authoritarian rule. But what bothers me more is, it seems to be there are intellectuals now, serious intellectuals who seem to get ready to accept a so-called Chinese model. Before that it was Singapore model, right? This marriage of capitalist economy and authoritarian government, it could work. So many Chinese, not only communists, may not accept Western participatory liberal democracy as the only viable approach, or the better approach, and they may reject a civic education framework based on this economic idea. Number 3 point, there seems to be a resistance to some of the languages we're using here. When talking about civil society or citizenship, particularly, we use adjectives like principled, global, universal, even democratic. These words are suspicious to a lot of Chinese. And why? Because there is a historical legacy working here. Okay? Long suffering from Western imperialist domination in the past and today, Chinese people are extremely sensitive to any and wary of any tendencies of Western control in international affairs. And Chinese may question our very motive when we talk about civil society or democracy with them. And this may sound crazy and parallel to what we're thinking, but I think it could be understood as a legitimate concern. Precisely because of these rhetorics, their historical connection to Western imperialism. Of course, this also reflects the effect of the official governmental brainwashing. But in any case, my point is, for us to be taken seriously by them, we have to really work on our messages, and we need to find acceptable vocabularies first when we talk about civil society and civic education with Chinese. And number 4 point is no civic education could be developed from nowhere. It has to be rooted in cultural traditions. But unfortunately, the Chinese cultural tradition has little to do to modern civic society and citizenship. Like the Taiyi shows in the West, we can trace some some very important democratic ideas are all the way back to Asian Greeks, right? Not so China. The long-lived and pervasive Confucianism is basically the order within personal self-perception. I know I'm overgeneralizing, but I think I'm not correct. And the more than half-century communist rule has done everything to guarantee the continuation of this anti-democratic situation. Number 5 one is go to schools. I'm an educator, so I'm concerned with what we can do in formal schools, elementary, secondary schools, in terms of civic education. But there's little time or space in schools today for civic education right now. Education in most, if not all, elementary and secondary schools is completely test-driven, and non-academic subjects are very much marginalized, with teaching to the test and learning dominating. Thinking is not a priority, let alone critical thinking, which we all believe is basic capacity or skill needed for modern citizens. So that's the other point. Number 6 point, there has never been meaningful civic education in Chinese schools. The self-claimed civic or citizenship education is largely and in nature, in my view, ideological propaganda. And number 7 point, moral education, that's another fixture in Chinese schools. Unfortunately, is also a huge barrier to meaningful civic or citizenship education because, again, it is dominated by political education and or individualism or indoctrination, both working against democratic civic education. So it may sound very depressing, but as long as I admire and appreciate what you guys have been doing, I think it's very important for us to remind ourselves what we are working in and for.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours. Democracy rules. Or you prefer what's yes.
Loud.
I very much share many of your concerns that has mentioned. So I do wonder, there's 2 things I'm wondering, whether there are viable routes through which
viable
vocabularies maybe for civic education to be introduced into the system. One would be through the language of innovation and creativity. Perhaps, is that, given everyone's expertise, is that one of the viable vocabulary or routes to introduce some kind of curriculum redesign or a grassroots way of introducing some critical thinking to the classroom? Number 2, what about science? How much does the Chinese society or education system currently value, for example, neuroscience? What does that have to say about our ability to learn or about our ability to create? Is science a acceptable language through which we can introduce some civic awareness?
Thank you. Would like to answer that?
So I think the story that I just told has a different component, which is the urban component. And I think in the larger sense, the government is not crushing the society as a whole. It is actually utilizing the components that could help them to deliver public goods. So if you find organizations that are providing healthcare, providing poverty alleviation programs, or community development, and if the leader has a very good connection, leader of the organization has a very good connection with local government, then these programs are allowed. And sometimes government would also treat that organization as a lower level government, basically co-opt by the government. So they encourage the vocabulary as 社会参与, social participation of these individuals to help deliver public goods, provide service together. And this is very important right now in food safety, in environment, in various dimensions of public welfare. I do want to comment also on the science and technology innovation because the government looking at the GDP data being slowing down and slightly concerned because a lot of the legitimacy of the Chinese government is based on this rapid growth of in the economic domain. So they want to encourage entrepreneurship, innovation, people starting up their own companies, potentially generating healthy jobs that are sustainable. So we have just saw a confrontation between the political domain and economic domain in the past few weeks because the party, as the maybe imitating the Singaporean model, always wanted a free market, a more capitalistic market, but a very controlled political domain. It is not conflicting until we have seen a few instances coming up recently. For example, GitHub, a platform where software developers are trading, exchanging codes and starting their innovation together, while they are also having mirror sites of blocked websites like Google, Twitter, that they would have mirror sites so that Chinese citizens, even with cannot access Google directly, they can go to the mirror site at the GitHub. And so Chinese government initially blocked the GitHub website entirely, fearing that this is going to be a loophole for the Great Firewall of China, of internet access. And then the technological community complained because now it is inhibiting innovation. And the government actually reversed its policy by opening up GitHub again. So just from that particular example, I think a freer market is probably more important than very tight control of the society. And particularly with a population, particularly the rural population, still believing in the government, the local government more than other forces in the society, they are willing to give the society a try.
Yes, Japan.
You mentioned about this thinking and critical thinking, but also I'm trying to tie back with the 21st century scale. So if the government, from the policy perspective, innovation is encouraged and you see the utility value of having developing these skills, critical thinking skills, as well as interpersonal skills. Why it is not encouraged? Because it will develop or help develop industries and support the businesses where there is demand. In the US, we can see now more and more CEOs are asking new recruits that bring or have these kind of skills beyond STEM. Interpersonal skill, intrapersonal skill, as well as critical things. So I see there the contradiction.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, China is the place where you see most contradictions and paradoxes today in the world. You know, so they never deny they want to promote critical thinking. I mean, when you see their curriculum goals and aim and basically you see critical thinking right there. The policy, the curriculum, and the ways teachers teach, you know, the exams dominant in education clearly against.
I think that Civic's paper actually does very nicely demonstrate the tensions and contradictions that every actual individual teacher faces in this context. Thank you. Next question. Next question.
Yes. So, everyone, first, thank you guys for I'm our student at the Master's Program in Technology and Education. I have two questions. The first question is about technology. And as we've talked a little bit about how technology could be a potential key to change society. And but at the same time, we're seeing that the government is trying to control technology. Do you guys think that technology in China could be a hopeful as it has stirred the revolution in the past? I'm not suggesting that revolution is good or not, but like for building up social changes in a form that never could be realized before. So,
how wrong were we with our expectations about rural technology in the Arab world? That would be a question for us. Civic. But we were so wrong.
I think I want to ask what we mean by technology here, because using social media
that's
is one thing, but I'm thinking that the technology is more than just the current use of social media.
I think the emerging technologies, the smartphones, the new messaging apps, and the new ways of communication, basically. I couldn't talk to my parents every day, and now I can. That sort of thing, I think, is showing change in how people think, live, and it has some potential social impact. I wonder if it could be directed to a direction that is helpful.
Yeah, and even I was sure that just that it's so difficult to predict. That's exactly.
It's prediction as well.
Prediction is so difficult. On the other hand, I'm totally with you that you cannot imagine either that in fact at any time to communicate with friends and parents.
So the interesting dichotomy here that is mirrored in your program, technology, innovation, and education. On the one hand, there's a strong push. So prediction side, we don't want to predict. The only prediction I would make is that China's too big to fail. Okay, that might be but so in technology, innovation, and education, there's a strong traditional educational dimension that is totally embraced in China with invitations to everyone who's connected to this form of education, invited into the prestige chair, constantly being invited. Rural education, open universities. The social media side represents that bottom circle in your framework, which is the moral. And that's the one that's hard to control and even harder to predict what the outcomes will be. Because we see, even in our country, that the outcomes are both terrible and wonderful.
Technology is not neutral. It could be used for different purposes. On the one hand, I'm hopeful about this widespread, the spreading of the use of social media. But on the other hand, I think to talk about how the government is also catching up technology to build this green wall, fair wall, right? But I'm concerned with something I mentioned in my talk earlier. In social media, like among interactions in general, so among
chatting on software, on WeChat, and it's getting a lot of momentum, and it's quite liberal. And I think this market economy has to be, if I want to work there, just thinking of practical advice to achieve real such changes. So,
I would say that to some extent I agree with Rob's point about potentially people who are working in research in technology necessarily fully understand just exactly how profound the social practices are at the level of the individual young person. I think that's the thing which has been, there's still a model of, I think, general education, not just like, of course, generally, teachers still says, what can I do to use this new tool? Forgetting that actually the kids are using these tools 24/7 outside the system. And what happens is we're scared of that. It's actually the surface of the skills they've now got. And there hasn't really been a transition in education generally to realizing that this is a whole new world out there. And until we start understanding how kids have developed social practices that we are, because even you are probably too old, certainly we are too old, to be able to appreciate just how revolutionary that force is. I mean, some of you heard me do this before. Whenever I talk about this, particularly sometimes, I fish out my iPhone and say you would access every single piece of information, the entire history of the world universe on this machine. Pause. Why are we getting kids to use it in classrooms? I mean, it's a simple point, but that's sort of, we're not thinking like that. The Arabs really did work, but I don't quite know. I think maybe it was too early in the evolution of social practices. It also wasn't much organisation. There wasn't much centralised organisation of people who were actually testing. But
we don't do this sometimes. We expect the internet to bring it through. And in our model, thinking about democracy, and also here in the West, it's very professional. We got best freedom. You can have best freedom. Yes, people.
Is it really a current Chinese model of political economy any longer, or are they making it up as they go along in order to retain power? Some form of hybrid state capitalism with an authoritarian bent to it. But most of the problems that these children and these youth were discussing were topical issues, similar to quality of food, environment, village life, administration, and corruption. Those are all important, but they're not getting at the organizational roots in the context in which this is occurring. So they're retaining this name communism, but they're moving in an entirely different direction. So there's such an obvious paradox here that you have to ask, is the nature and principles and goals of communism still in their sight at all? Or are they simply retaining a misnomer that's creating an internal contradiction that is almost going to be impossible to resolve? I mean, the youth no longer care about anything other than individual achievement.
I quite like to ask the Civic on James Gus at this point to have thoughts about the spot today.
What are you thinking, Alice? That's a great point. I would suggest you can think of the kids as the canaries in the cave. And what we see in our data is an enormous confusion in the kids, where they are, in a certain sense, experiencing market capitalism, social communism, and Confucianism in their commons. They don't kind of know which of these major ideological domains they're supposed to be speaking about and to. So I think your comments are right on.
Plus Japanese cartoons. Plus Japanese cartoons.
Japanese cartoons.
Japanese, like anime.
What? That's another cultural resource.
Yeah. I can test that.
Until we understand all these cultural resources, like begins.
And Korean opera, soap operas.
Right.
But the popular culture. And to the technology, I guess I have done some work in China, and to me it's very surprising that their habits of using technology, their attitudes towards technology is very Guangzhou, which is like a very urban area. And I think we really don't look at us. I haven't really looked into whether there are researches about sort of differentiated usage of technology. Because I use WeChat, and it's my immediate tool to do that. But a lot of the students that I'm working with who are from more low-income families, they use QQ. They stick with QQ, and QQ has a simile of a Twitter thing in their website. It kind of puts everything together. So they do, they follow other people's QQ accounts, and they meet their tweets. So I guess there's it's weird thing. We work with children, so we're wondering whether we should establish a public page on QQ because we're talking to them. We have a WeChat account, but those are for I don't know, our donors. So I guess there's a very interesting side of technology uses that we might not know, and still in a lot of schools, cell phones are banned. Cell phone itself is banned. And it's considered as a tool for fun, essentially. You just play it. But I guess
school, there's like kind of like implicit, there's like kind of like implicit agreement that if you are, even though it's banned in the school, if you're in the dorms, you can still use it. So I guess the whole habit, the whole way that kids are using these technologies, I haven't seen like very systematic to try to look at, especially in the rural areas. Any more questions? Yes.
One question is, so given that kids are confused and there's all these kind of resources, what about we just acknowledge we live in a globalized world and kind of push that as an identity, a globalized person as an identity? Is that okay with the Chinese government, or is that kind of like directly against the nation state building exercise?
Well, that's an interesting question. When I was looking at China as an agent in globalization, first comment from some of my colleagues was, "Oh, all the students are synchronized. That's the main." And I was saying, "Is that so? What is the agency?" And I've been teaching a lot of Chinese students. I always ask them at the beginning of the course, "Did you get a list of things you're not supposed to listen to? Or where you should sit right?" No. At the end of the course, I was like, "What do you take meaning? And what was meaning for China?" And the responses, I didn't do any systematic this but the responses changed over time, but they were always still rather cautious. Still cautious, like what sort of impact they could have going back to China to change the system. And this goes back to your research. So probably in the long run that may change. But then again, what is the basis for lots of people going around in China? What would be the message? That goes back to the same thing about identity, about etc. There is now first Chinese program offshore camp in the French camp in the Chinese. It's the first Chinese government-funded higher education program in Japan. Again, what is the agency? Confucius institutes have that sort of agency, of course, and that's a traditional one. What would be the agency of the Chinese? I would be really fascinated question. Young Chinese as global citizens. I mean, I think that's the key question.
I just want to add some comments about the recent update because during the Wuhan year, we actually saw the public sphere opening up, that the society was kind of like recovered. And when she took power, as mentioned, that it is abruptly changed. And just, for example, the education minister just recently announced that Western textbooks should not be directly used in college classrooms, at least not be taken at its face value. So do we have critical thinking in college? Yes, we do, but you have to criticize the Western textbooks. You have to be critical of that particular target. Okay? And second, they have been reforming the college entrance examination, the National College Entrance Examination, which every high school graduate needs to take in order to get into college. And so English is now going to be taken out in 2016. The Chinese language is going to be much larger in proportion. And so basically, I think as Professor Wendy mentioned that there is some concern about cultural colonialism from other side, and she wanted to revolve the Confucius way of thinking and try to establish a barrier between the Chinese society and outside world. And so we see the progress we have been making in the educational sector in the society, but the state is also moving towards another direction that is pushing further along. Yes. Yes. So in 2015, this year, it's going to be fortunately cut. So the makeup is not going to be heavy. and 2016 entirely online.
There you go, business schools against Chinese parents.
This person had a hand up for a while.
I think I don't really have a question, but I would like to offer some of my personal experience. I actually worked in Wall Street as an investment professional for 15 years. And 7 years ago, my family moved back to Shanghai. And I have a son, 8 years old, who is educated in New York City private school. So my goal in China was to have my son continue his education, that Western education, without going to an international school in Shanghai, because I wanted him to learn Chinese language. So I enrolled him into a local elementary school, which is which research showed that is totally against the Western civic education. So at that moment, I can totally basically subject my son to the very Chinese education, or I can do something on my own to have him have the benefit of learning Chinese, as well as continue his, the root of the Western civic education. So what I did is exactly like this gentleman said. Chinese government and Chinese population as a whole, they are so experienced, or they are the quintessential of paradigms. And you see all kinds of contradictory things. So instead of then myself try to correct their contradictoriness, I try to be as contradictory as them. Okay? So basically I try to convince them it is okay to have the Western civic education concept. At the same time, you can maintain your Chinese Confucius ideology. For example, what I introduced, therefore I actually started basically a weekend enrichment program. A school eventually. So that school has been in existence, still exists for 7 years now. And we have average students from 150 to 200 students. So the core message I send is moral education and character education, which is another version of civic education, because I know how the government is against the civic education. But the moral education is supporting the citizenship. If you ask the Chinese government, do they want citizenship? Yes. Okay. And I recommend respectfulness among each other. Do they want? Yes, because that's totally consistent with Confucius. And I talk about confidence, which is the social skill, personal skill. Do Chinese government want Chinese citizens to be confident? Yes. So they totally embrace that. Then I talk about compassion among each other. Do they want that? Yes. So no problem. And I talk about creativity. They, like what you said, they want to be creative in criticizing Western culture. So they want a creativity, okay? The only thing you cannot touch is, because in education, you are teaching the kids to understand the relationship between himself with the nature, and himself with another individual, and himself with the government. You can touch the former too. Basically, Chinese think about a kid's relationship with nature and with another individual very much similar as Western look at it. But when you touch the concept of your relationship with government, then you get into the taboo. You don't want to touch that. So I'm willing to not touch that part. I touch everything else. And over the 7-year period, I see tremendous acceptance from not only parents as well as official schools. To be evidenced as more and more schools want to incorporate our program into their regular education. So I just want to offer this kind of front view to give everybody hope. And we need to recognize the paradox, and we should think the paradox is an opportunity for us to get into it rather than an obstacle.
Thank you so much for that. That's wonderful.
Well, I just want to build on that. First of all, your analysis and strategy is why I'm a developmental psychologist, because the research evidence is that people who can live with paradox are best equipped to survive in this world. I've even heard it in the analysis of discussion about Buddhism. The second thing that you're doing, which you didn't state, is you're being a little subversive. Extremely subversive. Right? But so the danger occurs when you get to content. In other words, all the skills and characteristics you identify are hard to argue, but it's content that's king. Okay? And it's when you step on the wrong content line that you will explode. Now this is ironic because in effect, I doubt whether the takeaway kids have of content that people in power think they take away. I doubt whether the kind of, let's call it neo-patriotic content that all countries believe, all people in power in countries believe, actually the message that kids actually take away. So your list of 7 problems, if you hadn't told us you were talking about China, I wouldn't know which country you were talking about, quite frankly. I'll give you an example. One example, anecdotal, of course. We tried to promote empathy in a curriculum that we had promoted. We found resistance in the state of Texas. Texas does not believe in empathy. Okay, they do not want empathy in their curriculum. So Texas, China, I mean, it's endless. So you have to navigate that path.
You know, I understand that point, but I think there's also a danger we try to figure out particular problems of place or countries that we have this tendency to say, you know,
it's everywhere.
We're all struggling, you know what I mean?
No, that's right. You have to do that's fine, but I just want but what I took away from your presentation, which I enjoyed very much, is the actual power and danger of words and their meaning. And so if you're subversive, what you have to do is use those words that work in that particular, or as we say, they have to be words with Chinese characteristics.
we actually, interesting talk about words. We actually, in our classroom, for example, we have one class called British Literature, Analysis and Conversation. Our students are basically 7th grade and up. And one of the books we study is Animal Farm.
Oh, yeah.
And the teacher, and we also, study the giver. Okay, and the teacher are all either American teacher or the British teacher, and we have very open discussion with those students about how the relationship between the individual and the government, and we think we ignite the fire in those young people's mind in thinking about this, which they are not doing it in their regular school. But I can tell you that there will be more and more people who are doing what I'm doing. And there will be more and more people will expose those things to the students who cannot get this exposure in their regular school. And I think your research will inspire more people to go to the country and set up probably a small shop, try to spread the information.
Say something.
Well, I just wanted to know how you are teaching animal farm so Bob, maybe you should talk first about disciplinary literacy. That's what's interesting to me about this conversation is the power of nutrition, carrying some of the culture, some of the narratives. So, just say a little bit about disciplinary literacy.
So, tomorrow night I'm going to a Seder. What Seder is? Passover Seder. It's a Jewish tradition.
Passover related.
Passover related. And in a certain sense, the question is, has Israel become the pig in animal farm? All right? Has Israel turned from the victim into the perpetrator in animal farm? So the question that's really global, and this relates, and this is, I agree with what you're saying, honestly, but the question is, how would you portray animal farm with Chinese characteristics or with American characteristics? What would be similar and what would actually fundamentally different? So, see, when proposed in the course, about which we observing in some ways writing a cross-platform educator's resource using Animal Farm as the story. Because, you want to say anything?
Well, it's preliminary. I was only introduced to Animal Farm in the past 3 years. I find it fascinating book to read and thinking about how society transitions, how the victim becomes the oppressed become the oppressor, right? Poetry, words. So the idea really is to unpack the characters that are in the storyline to perspective take for the children, and also putting a distance between sort of like the not directly asking them what would you do, but like putting them in positions of social structure and political structure or large.
I just want to add this one thing very quick. I think when you exposed to animal farm when you are 25 years old or 30 years old, when you already had experience, you look at this book more like as reflective. You say, that makes sense because my experience told me this way. But when you expose this book to a 7th grade or 8th grade who don't really have any particular life experience, you are propaganda them. You are brainwash them. That's exactly what we want to do. Brainwash them before they get rooted. So they are. That is the
We're going to talk afterwards. We're going to hang around.
But we don't also argue the same thing was true of these Dickens in the 90s. I think we should really now move to the reception and informal conversation. I'd like first to thank all the panel for their contributions and thank the audience for an extremely interesting discussion.